Hello and welcome to episode 63 of The Imperial Truth. I'm Greg. Joining me, as usual, is Neil.
Hello, Greg.
Hello, Neil. And we're here to, do the normal, really. Introduce you to this episode and what we will be doing in this episode, which is... What are we doing? We're going to be talking about the Company of Legends event, and we're also going to be having another one of our sections on the community and the heresy and all that jazz, and maybe what you can get up to. It's been quite cool. We've had responses, actually, before we go into the sponsors. So there is now a Yorkshire heresy group. Can't remember what it's called now, but if you Google Yorkshire heresy on Facebook... let me just, in fact, put it in as we speak. Man, look stuff up on the internet. Okay, Yorkshire Heresy, flat caps, whippets, and 30k. But if you just type,
I like that.
If you just type in Yorkshire Heresy, Rob, who was on the show doing the kind of beginners, kind of how he's getting into 30k, he decided to set that up. Not many members on it yet, but I'm sure that will grow as knowledge of it gets around, which is cool. And had some other people talking about podcasts and things and how it there's been little bits talked and I've discussed it as well with other people about what we're hoping to do with the show as we move forwards, but loads of cool stuff, which is groovy. Well, I think it is anyway, so that's all good. We got lots more of that planned, hopefully, and some interesting chats ahead with some people who might not be so obvious as well, which is really cool. But before we go too far down that rabbit hole, we should introduce our sponsors. Element Games. Now, we'll get into the news, but they do have some heresy stuff on sale. But I just dropped 84 quid on bases with them.
Blimey.
Yeah, I'm going to rebase all my Space Wolves rather than doing my custom bases, which I came to do some more to add on a piece or two. And I was like, I'm going to have to snap up CD cases and glue them down. And then I was just like, you know what? I can buy 20, 32 mil bases for like 20 quid or whatever it is.
Sometimes the money sort of makes the decision for you, doesn't it?
Again, it'll be another drinking game term soon, but it's how much do you value what you're doing, and the time and the effort that I put into making those bases could be spent on building and painting models. So
yeah, completely.
And I've still got to paint them. So if I get the GW ones, and the idea is to, at work, spray them black, spray them silver, maybe go over a couple of parts of it in a different colour, and then wash it all down, and that should be done really quickly. Or I sit here and I snap up CD cases and put them and crack them and then glue them down and then do some more and then put the sand round them and then wait for that all to dry and then realise I haven't glued something properly. I'd rather just be getting on with stuff. So, yeah, it costs money, but that time can be used. I've got shed loads of stuff here in these paintings. So, and I think it's been made worse since we're recording this on the 12th, and I haven't done any hobby since, the Wednesday before that? So that's 7 days before that, like the first or second.
Yes. Is this where your target, trying to hit your target?
Yeah, so, it just made me aware that, I haven't done any hobby in that amount of time. And it's like, wow. So if I then spend my next few hours of hobbying, making bases, just doesn't feel like I'm progressing.
Yeah, definitely.
So I went and ordered a shed load of bases, which is, it's one of those things you don't want to do. You don't want to sit and make them either. So it's just one of those, like, I could be buying more models. But as I say, I've got plenty to be painting and working on in that respect. So, we'll be working on from that. So yeah, I went and chucked a load of Element for that because they got all that stuff on there.
Did you remember to input your code?
I did input my code.
And did you click through the banner?
I don't have to.
Oh, do you not?
No, I don't. Yeah, it's all tied to my account, the affiliate scheme. So, although every now and then I do that because I think, better do that. Drummed it into my own head so much. But yeah, it all helps. It's all good. And I'm looking at a few other things as well for that. But yeah, Element Games, still smashing it out of the park. We've got, if you want that, because that Triumvirate came out, didn't it, this week?
Yes.
So that's just come out with some awesome models on it. And then, well, I don't know, rumours have started to appear about potentially what's going on in 40k moving forwards. So maybe we'll look at them a bit down the line, because I think they might affect us, and we'll have to discuss, if they're true or not, because they're very early stage rumours at the moment. But yeah, Element Games are still, knocking it out of the park, which is groovy. And Miles hasn't been very busy this week.
Has he not?
No, he's on honeymoon.
Is he still on honeymoon?
Well, yeah. I mean, we're still on that delay from honeymoon. He has posted up a couple of things in the last couple of days. I was going to say, he doesn't stop, does he, with his Instagram and his... No, the last couple of days.
Twitter.
I think he got back a little bit before we recorded, but yeah. So congratulations to Miles again for getting married, and he'll be.
And if you have no real time, and you want to save, you're looking to save time by buying something like bases, you can save even more time by getting Miles to paint it for you as well.
Absolutely. Or if you just want that, what he's particularly good at, I think, is. Say I paint all my Space Wolves and then I get him to do the Primarch. Primarchs and those kind of models can be really intimidating for people. Or they just want them done better than they know they can do them.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So, there are many times I see, I don't even want to start my Primarch because I'll muck it up. Well, maybe get a professional to do it. Or, I really want to paint my Primarch, but I know I won't do it justice anyway. And I'd rather it look really good. Well, that's what Miles is there for, That's, what he specialises in as well, is those individual models. Although he does, as he says, have the, he leaves space for the odd larger, commission. Or, if you think that I don't even know where to start with this model, why not use some of that money to have one-on-one tuition with him? So you can paint,
improve your own skills first.
Yeah, so you can paint that model to the standard you're happy with, and then you can transfer that through your models as well. So you're actually getting a lot more for your money in that respect, if you can do that. So, offering up loads of cool stuff, which is really good. So I can hear you popping paints.
Yes,
is this
indeed.
For Mr. Corax?
It is indeed. Corax is coming along quite nicely. I had a bit of a weird week this week because I sort of got a bit demotivated and a bit and I've called it the Slayer Sword Blues, where I was talking to my friends, I was going, I just can't seem to sit down and get anything done to any great purpose. I was sort of a bit I felt a bit like I was a bit in holiday mode.
Sure.
And I don't know whether it's not because, the thought of having to, and it's not so much the time element, because I think I'd be painting like mad if it was a tighter time frame. But I just felt as though I haven't really done a lot this week. But I'm going to try and get back into it next week and kick it all on and make sure you're ready for May. But yeah, so I've been, plodding away with it. I haven't put up many photos because there hasn't been a lot of progress. But
is that maybe because to go further you're going to have to paint better?
Yeah, I think there's a thing where I think I've sort of hit a level, and to go to the next level is going to be a big push.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like I'm at a stage now. I'm thinking, well, what I've done is I've achieved that, and I've achieved that level of where I wanted to be. But to get to the next level is going to be a hell of a lot of hard work.
Sure. Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, that's an interesting one. So, is that you've talked before about not having because your competition painting takes so long, and there's only so much time in the day and everything else, and you work a full-time job. You've kind of talked before about maybe not painting to the same level on armies.
Yes, yeah, completely.
So is that something where maybe you think actually take a break for a week and bash out some Marines?
Yeah, it's probably fair to say actually, because I've been staring at my Night Lords for a long time now, thinking, what, these guys have got to get done soon. It's getting a bit ridiculous how long I've had these in grey, and I want to get those done. And what I really want to do is get them done and be able to go to some tournaments. And I want to try and make next year about going to
playing more
events and playing more games rather than just sitting at a table painting all the 3 hours. So
Sure.
I want to try and get them done. And if I can get them done by the end of the year, I think I'd be quite happy.
So maybe that's a case of when. I mean, would those Night Lords have to be to the same standard as your old Night Lords?
No.
Okay.
So what I'm looking to do is I'm looking to try and pick up some good like airbrush techniques, some good solid painting, just to sort of I want them to look good on the table. But I've noticed from when I was using my iron hands at the Takan Riva event that you can go into loads and loads of detail, but you can't see it. So why waste your time going to hand paint on symbols onto a knee pad when actually no one's actually going to get that close to see it?
Yeah. If it's not a competition entry, it doesn't have to be a competition standard, does it?
Exactly.
Cool. Okay. So maybe pushing forwards. That's your challenge.
Yes, I think it will be. Yeah.
Excellent. I've, as I say, I've not done much hobby very recently. Hopefully I've got loads of bits winging my way to me for my Inquisimunda, Inquis 28 and my Age of Sigmar variants. So I'm waiting for those bits to turn up to start some kit bashing, because work would be great for kit bashing. I didn't quite...
Did you do any painting at work? You said you might take
No,
some.
I was going to do the bases. I thought, actually, that's a brilliant idea. I'll take all these bases to work. Went into G-Dub and just thought, you know what? I'm just going to buy spray cans. And because I'm not taking my airbrush to work, and spray, G-Dub, I know other people use other products, but I've said before, and I'll say again, the GW black spray can is so hard to make a mistake on. And I knew I wouldn't be spraying in ideal conditions. So I'm like, stuff it. Just buy it. Oh no, I've got a bit too close. Oh no, nothing's gone wrong. I can get around everything. And I bought
an XL one recently.
Yeah, that's the one I've got. It feels so huge in your hand. It's weird.
Massive.
And I thought, I'll do bronze bases. No, they don't do a bronze spray can. I don't want to paint it on. I'll get a gold and I'll wash it down. And then I got to work and thought about getting the bases out and thought, that's not going to work. No, it would take more effort to make that work than it would painting them. So what I'll do is I'll do silver and I'll wash them down. But because I was doing overtime at work, I literally couldn't leave site for 46 hours. We were stuck on site. So, and I was like, I'm just too far away from my friends to come and drop something off. But I know the guy who runs the store drives not too far away. No, I can't. I can't kind of. Could you pop that around?
Some elaborate drop off.
Yeah, no. So I thought, you know what, stuff it. I can do it another day during work. It's not a major thing. It will be literally like getting all the bases out still on sprue, spraying them all black, and then leaving them to dry, and then coming through and just spraying them all silver. Leave them on the sprue, big wash brush, just wash them all down. Painting, one or two other colours on them to break it up.
I suppose, because the ones on painting those on the sprue must be relatively easy, I suppose, because they're all facing the right way, aren't they? And not, because I mean, sometimes I consider, can I paint it on a sprue? Not that I really have done much of that in the past, but
some people do.
You sometimes think actually that part is facing the wrong way. And
I think the only things you can really do that with is shields, pretty much, or they're the best things to do it is with shields. Because they're usually flat, so it's two-dimensionals. But then you've still got to clip them off the sprue. And so there's that bit.
Sort of cleaning the edges and that.
Yeah, so with bases, it's not much of an issue, because by the time I finished it, there'll be other paint over the base anyway, and I'll just, black rim them again. So, can do them all on sprue, blue tack the sprue down to a cardboard box, and just move it around. Bish, bash, bosh. Nice and easy. So,
easy peasy.
Indeed. So that'll be this week's project, because I'm not going to get a huge amount done this week, because I'll be flying off to Adepticon pretty soon. And then once back from Adepticon, I've neglected my flat for a month, so I need to crack on with bits and pieces in here, and and other stuff as well. It'll be the race to the next Age of Sigmar event as well. That never stops, but plenty. I've got to get some time done eBaying some stuff. I've got some got some collectible stuff. So I realised I've still got a Van Sar gang, and I've still got, I've got some Space Wolf data cards and things like that, and they can fetch some silly money for what they are. So I need to get on eBay once I get back home. But yes, that is my plans. I did manage to pick up a Contemptor Cortis Dreadnought on the Facebook trading site.
Now, how you say this? It's not actually. It's an Iron Warriors Dreadnought.
It's an Iron Warriors Dreadnought, but it will be my Contemptor Cortis Dreadnought because for those who haven't looked at the Iron Warriors one, it's like pared back. It's like the front of it is, it's not ornate. Let's put it that way.
It's ramshackled, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of just left. No, that still works. Why are you going to fix it? So, and I think for my Space Wolves, it would work perfectly as a Contemptor Cortis. So, I managed to pick one of these up, from, Ben, which was a really useful, nice and cheap, actually. Got it decent price. I've just got the glue on his legs broke, but where his legs are fitted in, it hasn't moved it. So I just need to rebase him and just get some glue into that joint to fix it down. And then repaint that. But add him to the pile of things that need to be done. But yeah, so it's going to be a busy couple of weeks leading up to that with recording and things. So all fun.
It sounds it.
Indeed. Right, cool. I think that's just about done for the intro. We'll come back and we'll chat some news.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, into the news. Not a huge amount of news, but some stuff to talk about. So, new models. The Achilles. We were talking about this. Joseph and I went up via Warhammer World to Durham for Company of Heroes, and we stopped into Warhammer World, and I met him at whatever time in the morning. I was like, it'd be really cool if they released the Spear Dread, because he wanted one for his thing. I was like, I think they will. So he ended up spending 250 quid at Forge World.
That's a good way to start the weekend. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I'm sure we'll talk with him about his ideas for a Gravglaive that cost him a lot more than that afterwards. But one of the maddest conversions I've seen. But yeah, I mean, another one from what we've already seen and pushing on forwards, which is always good. And the posability on these models is redonkulous. Like that, their fingers are all individual.
Are they really? Blimey.
Yeah. Joe and I were discussing what kind of poses you could have. Some good, some not so good, but yeah, they're really good, really cool model. And that's the one that does the strength D if it rolls a 6 to hit on the charge.
Yeah, I've got to admit that's my favourite one.
Well, Joe and I will probably talk again. I love the spear models. They're iconic. They look better. In game, I fear the shield guys have the edge, and an edge that's required to a certain extent, as in most of my custodies would have shields, because it keeps them in the game.
Yeah, and when you've got so few models, you really need to protect them.
But, it's a small thing. And it depends who you're playing. It depends how much you want to, I say you're playing against someone who's less in your face with the style of army they build, then you swap them out to the, spear guys. We were talking, we'll probably talk about this. We're talking about maybe modeling them with shields and the spears. So they look like Spartans or whatever, but calling them, sword and board guys. Because the shield's the predominant thing you see. So it's like, oh, those are the guys with the shields. So, we'll see. There's lots of cool stuff you can do. But that was all Forge World for the last 2 weeks for Heresy. I did loads of Blood Bowl.
Blood Bowl, I was going to say Blood Bowl, yeah.
A very cool Blood Bowl. But Heresy was just the Dreadnought. But GW stepped up. So, Plastic Mark III and Tartarus Terminators. So single boxes, I'm going to try and remember now exactly how much they were, because they weren't a huge amount on Element. I know that. I think it was about 24 quid for the Tartarus, 10 Tartarus.
Not bad.
which is not bad. I mean, it's again, it's the price is what the price is. Yeah, 24 quid for the Mark III, 28 for the Tartarus, which isn't bad. And if you go to GW Direct, you can buy them in larger boxes as well, which I don't know if that's worth it. 60 quid for 20, so no. It's just not worth it, is it?
That's why they just put 2 boxes together then.
Yeah, 60 quid for 20, so 48 for going via Element. But those boxes aren't available on Element, if you know what I mean. So you'd have to buy the 2 individuals, which is why you don't get the extra discount. But it's not bad pricing. And it's another easy way for people to mix up their troops. I would still advise looking on Heresy Trading or eBay if you're after Mark III and the Tartarus, because you can still pick up some very good deals on there. And the sisters and the Custodes are all being traded on. There's always sisters going up, and there's quite often Custodes, and there's some really good deals on some of these Heresy Trading sites. People selling Forge World Knights built and part magnetized for like 130 quid. It's crazy, really. You do have to be sensible. Never pay friends and family if you don't know who you're paying, and I mean, don't actually know them. Things like that. But yeah, it's good to have them out in their individual boxes.
Yeah, no, it's handy if you want to you need that extra set of Terminators, maybe. You don't have to buy a whole, Prospero set just for just for the Terminators. You can then buy what you need.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting, because, we were told that there's no plans to do another plastic box, but I think if it's far enough away, they wouldn't let us know anyway if they did. So it'll be interesting to see if we do get another plastic box, or whether they just try and look at what else needs to be plastic, because, maybe we should start not a petition, but, gather names together or get people to individually email in. Because, plastic, as we say, plastic hover jet bikes will be well appreciated. Or maybe, I don't know, the assault marines, or what else? There's loads of stuff.
Would they do Mark II?
Potentially, who knows? Maybe it's a constraint of the design, the printing process. I don't know, but we can only ask, can't we? And if I'd
like them to do all the marks. That'd be quite handy.
I would think they'd try. The only reason I would see them not doing it is because they couldn't, or if they. I mean, because bearing in mind they've done Mark IV and Mark III in plastic, I could see them doing Mark II. It's the only one, isn't it?
Yeah.
If they sell slightly less from the others, will it be that bad? I don't think so. And I think it would sell. Just because it's plastic, again, more plastic Marines. And, there are people who really want their Legions in that Mark II. So,
exactly, yeah, so they would use it.
Yeah, fingers crossed we see it at some point. And as I say, there are other Legion choices as well that maybe benefit from it. So, Scouts, or, the Recon, should I say. Things like that. Who knows? But we can only hope.
Yes.
And then, did you watch in fact, I know you did because I saw you tweet about it. The Golden Demon section on Warhammer Live.
I did so. I saw it come up on Twitter. I subscribed through my Amazon Prime, or is it Twitch Prime they call it?
Well, yeah, but its Amazon Prime account gives you a Twitch subscription free every month. You have to. It stops every month, so you can choose the same channel or different channel or whatever. But yeah.
Yeah, so I did that.
It's really easy, isn't it?
Once I got round it, it was, because I don't use Twitch for anything else. So, I got into it, got it on there, because obviously I think it was like 3 o'clock or something, it comes on, they do these things, and of course that's the worst time of the day for me, because I'm knee deep in emails and problems I've got to sort out. So, I watched it that evening, and it was very enjoyable to watch my first proper bit of Warhammer TV all the way through.
Awesome. Yeah, I watched it the day afterwards, and it was good. The guys were good.
Yes.
You never know. You're not too sure when someone new's on there, but Darren and Max, was it?
Yeah, Darren and Max.
Yeah, Darren and Max were very good. Obviously not used to being in that situation, but were very good at explaining what they were doing. And they went through all the changes to Golden Demon. So, clarifying what a single miniature is. So we're including basically anything that's below the size of a large model.
Yeah, and they were very much sort of saying that, I don't think they actually said it, but they're pretty much referring to that it has to sort of be a monster now to be enlarged.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to be like a massive tyrannid or something like that. It's got to be something that really is not a single.
We're looking at monsters or creatures, or people riding monsters or things like that. So when we're looking at single model, Primarch's a single model. Stuff that's mounted on something is a single model. So if you've got Canis Wolfborn or someone like that, then that's a single model. So when it starts to get into, as you say, like a Trigon, or you get into like the Auroch on the big beastie, I can't remember what it's called now, that then becomes a large model.
Yes, and it did make me think, they seem to have moved a lot of things into the single miniature category. Because they've moved everyone on bikes and things like that out of vehicle into single miniature. They've moved Primarchs and larger base size models into single, which means that category is going to be absolutely insane with the amount of entries.
Yeah.
Going into it. But also it means that like, your monster, your 40k large category is going to be quite sparse. You know, there's not, if you think about 40k, most things will then fall into single now.
Was that, they got a separate one for tanks? I'm trying to remember.
Yes, so you got tank, 40k single squad, tank and large.
So you're maybe looking at, maybe the odd Mechanicum thing? But mainly,
I think they were including some of them in
yeah.
You see, some of the larger Mechanicum stuff you may say is vehicle. So you could argue that.
I'm talking about Thanatar.
Yeah, I think they might stick that in
single
in vehicle.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a vehicle. But yeah, I see what you mean. So yeah, you are mainly looking at Tyrannid stuff. There's not a lot else, is there? That's not a vehicle.
It's going to be the Tyrannid category. Or no, Tyrannid and maybe Greater Demons.
Greater Demons, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, things like that. So, there's a limit to what options there are. Really plus what people have painted. So, another category that if you fancy picking up your first demon,
and you've got
what you need, what you need to paint.
Yeah, if you've got the time. Absolutely.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, okay, that's cool. So yeah, and the idea is that things should be judged against something that is similar to them. So, individual models are not tanks. So tanks are painted and judged in a different way to a person on a bike.
Yes, and I think that is a very sensible idea because it's unfair to put those two.
Yeah. And it's pretty obvious as well, isn't it?
Yes.
It does work. So yeah, we got, the clarification. So as you say, we've got tanks, monstrous creatures, single miniatures, and the same kind of goes for Warhammer unit, which can be 3 models or greater, but that depends on what unit size you've got. So if you've got, say again, we'll use the, Space Wolf riding the wolves, however much people hate them or whatever, you're only going to need 3 of them in a unit, or jet bike squadron would be 3 minimum. But if you're going to do individual humans, you're going to need at least 5, probably 10. For a Space Marine squad, 5 will be your minimum.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're not putting any strict rules on it. You could enter 3 Space Marines if you wanted to, but what they're saying is, you're judged very much on how it looks and feels and fits into the background.
Yeah.
And 3 Space Marines standing next to each other doesn't do that. So you would put yourself on the back foot. So why would you do that? It's got to fit what you're trying to show.
Yeah, unless maybe those 3 Centurions would be fine.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But anything below that, so Terminators, you want 5. What I really like, so I mean that's pretty much across the board. You've gone through most of the categories in that. Essentially, as you said, right, so they judge on the feel of either 40k or Age of Sigmar. they judge on how it feels in that squad doesn't have to be a legal squad anymore. That model doesn't have to have legal things. They've removed that and allowed it to fit into that all-encompassing, well, it must feel right.
Yes.
Which is exactly. A really good thing.
What's quite cool is that you can combine stuff now and not have a worry. So
yeah.
I think their example was, you could have your chapter master and then a couple of Terminators and then a standard bearer. You can really mix it up and make it look cool. If you make it look cool, that's what they want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And that it takes away those restrictions whilst still making sure that people have to have that story involved, which is really good. And the other major thing is the basing. So it doesn't have to have the specific base you came with. It doesn't have to be on the right size bases. The base doesn't have to be a minimum size. They were talking about some of the old dual sizes of bases were so small that you couldn't fit anything on them. It has to be. I found that myself when I tried to model a dual.
Yeah. There's no room for two models to stand next to each other.
No. So it has to be appropriate to the entry that you're putting in.
Yes.
Which is, again, is something that you should be able to judge. And if you can't judge that, the chances are you aren't at a level to be entering the Golden Demon anyway, I would think, 99% of the time. Yeah. Well, the beautiful thing is you don't actually need a base anymore, so you can just have a wooden plinth, and you could have it almost coming out of that, as in, so it like seamlessly goes into the plinth, which is quite cool.
I think we'll see a lot more of that now.
Yeah.
I think there used to be so much of people putting stuff on bases purely because they thought they had to do that, just for the rules' sake.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and that's really cool. I really like that. What else did they say? So, clarification on the Forge World, the heavy metal competition, which was simply, do what you want with this model and that base. But it has to be that model and that base. Now, you can go over that base with lots of stuff, but that base must be there.
Yeah, they said you can add some sand and static grass.
Yeah, you can do
no more than that.
Yeah, it's not, even if you did, I think they'd ignore most of it. And I like the fact that, they've chosen this model now, and next competition it will be a completely different model. So, yeah, if cloaks and whatever are not your thing, maybe it's skin tones, then, yeah, I suspect they'll use that Auric guy that was used a lot last year as, the war leader, whatever it's called, as a model for that. And they're going to have loads of individual models that are going to come forwards, which is really cool. Really cool. And then we had, what else do we have? So, Blood Bowl category. And that was about it, wasn't it? The Young Bloods.
There was 2 Young Bloods. They've expanded that.
So cool. Small and large again, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, the Open as well. So, which has always been the Open. It's, for anything else and the one that staff can enter and everything as well.
In some ways now, with the Open being so heavily competed in by the studio team, I think I'd quite like them to do a, staff category and then an Unbound, maybe.
Right, okay.
But if it doesn't fit into any of those categories, give everyone a chance, because if you have got something you think, I can't enter it into any of those, you're then going up against the big guns.
But that's really hard to find something that doesn't fit in either of those, because diorama was diorama or fight scene, wasn't it? So,
yes.
And they made it very clear that, if you're going to have a fight scene, they need to look like they're fighting. If you're going to have a diorama, it's got to feel right again for 40k or Age of Sigmar or whatever universe you're putting it in. But I would find it hard to find an entry that doesn't fit into any of those categories.
I suppose the only thing really that doesn't fit into any of those that has to go and open out is the larger scale stuff. The really sort of the Inquisitor scale and bigger.
Yeah, so
you don't see much of that anymore.
Would that not fit in a single figure though?
No, they always used to have its own category.
Right, yeah.
And that was then called large scale.
Sure, okay, so I missed that bit. Okay.
And then ever since then, once they got rid of it, they stated that all had to go into
Sure.
open.
I suppose that's because people haven't got access to them. So it'd be unfair potentially. However, you know that going in. So if you want to paint that, then you know as soon as you start painting that model, it has to go into that category. And
That's
that
true,
category can't win the sword, can it?
No, it can't.
It's
no.
judged from all the other categories. So, you're not in for the sword either, which is probably a good thing, bearing in mind the staff entries. But, it's never going to be, there's always going to be the odd person who's a bit like, oh, I've got this and it don't quite fit. But, I think what they've done is clearer from the outside looking in. I feel very much more comfortable that I know what I'm going to be up against. Also that you can't pull shenanigans with your models. You can't look at individual model in 40k and go, no, I want to move my Primarch somewhere else. It's either that or open.
I think there was definitely a case where they were saying that, they would see, you'd look at a category and it could look a bit confused because you had things from varying scales, and then you could see a Primarch that was in large, and then you could also see a Primarch that was in single. So there was obviously, people weren't really sure. It's nice that they had the clarity. It's scary because 40k single now is just going to be horrendously competitive.
But if you want to win a golden sword, you got to be better than everyone anyway.
Yeah.
So,
golden sword indeed, yeah.
Kind of like moaning you get Barcelona in the quarterfinals of the Champions League. You're going to win the title. Chances are you're going to have to beat them.
Yeah.
So it does depend on what you're going in for. As we've said before on kind of cheating the system, there are ways of cheating it. As go and paint a Blood Bowl team. Go and paint and that Blood Bowl team was brilliant. That can have like 11 plus players, cheerleaders, head coach, do what you want pretty much, just long as
I must admit,
feels like Blood Bowl.
I think that's quite a cool category.
Yeah, it is really cool. So, there's lots of cool stuff you can do still around that, going for the lesser categories, lesser in inverted commas categories. Jewel and diorama again is always going to be one that's potentially there for the taking, as it were. Compared to single miniature 40k. And all heresy stuff is counted as 40k. That was one thing they were very clear on. It's the same universe, just 10,000 years difference. But they do have different feels, and just as long as yours fits the feel that you're going for, then you'll be fine. But I look forward to going and looking at all that, at Warhammer Fest. Could be quite busy, I think. As I say, I know that on the independent tournament scene for Warhammer, for Age of Sigmar, that they've kind of keyed up a little bit to the painting competitions and realised after last year that just your best painted tabletop models, at the very best you're going to get a pin. But so it'll be interesting to see how well attended it is. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, well, I'm sort of looking forward to it.
Gotta get Codex finished, baby. Time's a ticking.
Exactly.
Gotta win a Golden Demon for, sending them a model out. Yeah, absolutely. But, doing it for Jeff. Hashtag do it for Jeff. Awesome. Yeah, cool. And that was about all the news I had, unless you wanted to add anything on the Golden Demon front.
No, that's about it, really.
Good old Neil. Never adds any content. Keeps it short.
Painting. I'm trying to concentrate on painting here.
That's exactly what the listeners want to hear. As you are a very second to Corax at the moment. Bless. Brilliant stuff. Well, as I say, it's not hugely busy kind of couple of weeks, but there are lots of rumours out there, as I alluded to earlier. Maybe a few of those get kind of bigger or smaller, and there's definitely conflicting things going around. Some interesting images that might not necessarily be real that are floating around the internet as well. So I'm keeping an eye on 40k. I'm trying to catch up. Actually, I've got all the books, and I've only read the first one from this whole kind of section. So I'm trying to catch up to the Gathering Storm to find out what's going on in 40k. But lots of stuff that we'll be looking at. But anyway, we'll leave that there. We'll come back and we'll have Joe on, and we'll talk about our trip to Company of Legends. And joining me now, we have Joe. It's been a little while since Joe was on the podcast. Was it talking about the Eastbourne Elementals event?
Oh yeah, it was. I thought it was book 4, not quite that far back.
No, yes. So Joe and I, Joe travelled with myself up to the Company of Legends into the dim, dark north of England. It's certainly a different place from the south, that is for sure.
It did slowly get grimmer and grimmer, didn't it?
The weather didn't help, to be fair. But we eventually arrived after a short stop at Warhammer World for lunch, which the serving times have got a lot longer than they used to be, haven't they?
It was pretty busy, wasn't it?
Was it that busy?
It was a Friday after all.
Was it that busy? I didn't feel like it was terribly busy.
For all the staff as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they have bar staff and they have. Yeah, I don't know. I don't hold with that. I think it's certainly got worse. Maybe I've been there a bit more than you recently. But yeah, maybe. Good to watch a very short amount of Warhammer live. Actually, at the venue to see the magic
Warhammer
that
live
goes.
in the flesh.
In the flesh, yes, absolutely brilliant. But we got up to Durham in the end, and welcomed by this nice little scout hall, this adventure place. We're recording this after I've listened to the Sons of Heresy episode, so if you do listen to the Sons of Heresy, they've got quite a nice little rundown of the venue. But it's everything you want, really, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was great. It was perfect for a 2-day little retreat.
Yeah, they've
attached to the hall.
Yeah, 30 odd players, low 30s, I think it was, in that hall fairly comfortably, and as upstairs, dormitories with beds, bunk beds that were perfectly comfortable. People brought their sleeping bags. You and I, we took our duvets.
Yeah.
A sleeping bag's okay, but fold up a duvet and make a nice little sandwich out of it, and it was so
We went
warm.
for ultimate comfort.
We certainly did. Your onesie has been noted on the other podcast. But yeah, we certainly, like slippers. Like when you're at an event like that, there are, I've been to enough Warhammer events, haven't we, up in Liverpool, the Adelphi, where you don't really leave the hotel. So yeah, wear your slippers, take your really comfy clothes, you're not being seen by people, as it were.
Yeah, you don't need to leave the house.
No, if you are going to go to the shops, make sure you got a pair of trainers, jeans and trainers or whatever. Yeah, we're not going to go walking around in our onesies in Durham. That might be the done thing. I don't know, but not for us. Yeah, and those the bedrooms were fine. All laid out. For some reason, I got one by myself. There were only 2 beds in that single room. Whether they knew about my snoring, or they just thought no one would want to share with me. But there was plenty of extra room actually. So, because on the Saturday night you weren't drinking, your roommates were. So you came and took my bottom bunk.
Moved in.
Yeah, it's not a problem, is it? It all worked out. That was really good. Plenty of shower space. Showers weren't always hot, but then that's always going to be an issue. Something like that.
They're all private ones, though, so.
Yeah, that's really good. The fact that you can go and shut the door, you've got all the facilities there you need, without having to worry about other people coming in and whatever. And a decent kitchen, a big kitchen with, decent enough room for sitting down and eating, and a little chill out area. And then on the Sunday, you and I went for a little walk around the facilities. We saw some axe throwing going on. Couldn't work out what the hell that noise was for a while, but yeah, no, it was a nice little venue. I was quite impressed with it. What it has started to do is make me think about, where I live. There's probably 4 or 5 of those types of venues relatively close to me, but whether they're all suitable or not is a different matter, and whether they're within price range as well. But,
yeah, we did talk about accessibility as well, didn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. You've got people travelling by train and things, and yeah, you can do things where, like, I could borrow, my mum's got a 7-seater car, so I could borrow her car and do, like, taxi runs, as it were, picking people up from train stations, but you've got to take that all into account when you're organising event, because you don't want to. We'll go into that later. We'll talk about like the value of the event and everything else, but you want to maintain that to a certain extent. Okay, so you took, it was what, 3,500 points or 2,000 points plus 1,500 point add-ons?
Yeah, you could have sideboards.
Yeah.
You could have 1,500 point sideboards, but I don't think a lot of people actually used them.
No, there certainly were some people who had their 2 definite sideboards. I didn't have enough painted to really fiddle around with that too much, so I would just went, and even then I didn't get everything fully painted. You know, it was okay.
Yeah, mine much the same. It's just everything I've got painted.
Yeah.
Happy to add up to 3,500 points. Pretty handy.
Yeah, and I was quite happy that I was going to use the Porphyry in every game because I hadn't used it yet. So I was like, yeah, this is my list. I'm cool with that. So in my list, I had, the stuff it's the stuff I own basically. 3 Castellax, 2 units of 3 Thalax, some Myrmidons with Grav Guns, some Myrmidons with Grav Imploders, a choo-choo train for one of those units, the unkillable guy who always dies as my lord. I take an Ordinator to try and reach out and touch things. Another HQ to keep some of the monstrous creatures under control. 3 Vorax, a Thanatar, a Krios Venator, and the Porphyrion, and that's about it, I think. It's quite a lot in there. I had another single Darkfire Lance Castellax, but yeah, that was about it. Quite a compact army for 3,500 points. Of course, 500 points of Knight helps.
Yeah, and like 1,000 points of Myrmidons, something ridiculous.
Yeah, once you bought the train for them, I had 5 Myrmidon Destructors, which is not cheap, and once you bought the transport for the other dude as well, it does add up. What did you bring?
I took Solar Auxilia, as always. It's the only army I have painted.
Sure.
So I had a Lord Commander, 2 Tank Commanders, Las Rifle Section, 2 units of Stormtroopers in Dracosans, all tooled up, 2 units, a unit of Quad Mortars and a unit of Laser Destroyers, my trusty unit of Volkite Lehman Russes, a Malkador, not Defender, the one with a Battle Cannon and Demolish Cannon, Battle Tank, that's it, an Infernus, and then a Stormblade.
Very nice. So quite a lot of armour with a spattering of troops.
Yeah, I think it's something like 27 armor, 14 hull points. No, more, 37, I think.
Very nice, very nice. All sat with shrouding first turn.
In some of the games, yeah.
So Joe and I were both on the traitor side. Both of us not really bothered about which side we were on. So making up the numbers. Yeah, exactly. And they produced a lovely pack. The guys, I think we might have talked about it before, but 20 odd pages of information and fluff, and we were fighting over this. I can't remember the name of the system now. The Angstrom system, something like that. Angstrom. Yeah, I didn't read as much, or I read it, but I didn't take it in as much as maybe I would have had I had less painting to do. It was a bit manic in the build-up, but we're fighting over this system, and the idea was that it was a narrative event, and there would be a linked narrative running through all the games, and we had team captains that were, guys who they knew, Graham helping run it and everything as well, and the first games I think were kind of decided probably a little bit on kind of theme, but also maybe on picking out certain armies to face each other.
Yeah, I think there's a bit of an element of balance.
Yeah.
I think they looked at the lists and sort of decided who would be best paired against each other for kind of a fair matchup.
Yeah, and I think maybe we'll kind of run through our games and then talk about the narrative, as it were. And we're not going to go blow by blow on the games because, frankly, a couple of mine were quite dull to the outside observer. But my first 2 particularly. So I played. I got lined up against the Warhound in the first game. The one loyalist Warhound sat in a corner, and unfortunately, my list actually struggles to do the required amount of damage at range reliably to hurt a Warhound, to the point where I kind of thought if I blow everything else up, I'll probably still win the game. And then my dice decided to not let me save anything for the first 2 turns. And then the saving was fine, but I couldn't hit anything. So it was, it was all a bit of one of those games. You know, I could have done things better. I got unlucky with my knight being held up by one bike in a unit after a combat and holding. I'm not 100% sure that we did everything correctly in that fight, but, you know, that's as much on me as it is my opponent. But it was an interesting game in terms of not a lot. It was quite static. I know you come over partly way through this game. Was that this game?
No, I don't think I did.
I don't think you know. But, you know, the Warhound has such reach, has such ability.
Yeah, I played a practice game against him.
Yeah.
William. On the Friday night. I think our game lasted till about 2 a.m. But, yeah, the Warhound, I mean, it's got like 120-inch range on the turbo laser, so it just sits at the back and just
sits in a corner where I could do the same in reality with my Porphyrion to an extent, not quite as effectively, obviously, but you protect
running around kicking things.
Yeah, you protect its flanks. You know, you show your front armor off. You protect your flanks, particularly for the knight. That means your shield's facing one way.
Yeah.
And then you just shoot stuff, and it can become, and it's fine. That's perfectly fine if you want your Warhound to survive, particularly when there's potential for stuff around that can really hurt it. Maybe my Haywire can't, but I've certainly got other things that could damage it. That's not a problem. But it did mean the game was a little bit kind of, this is going to sit here and I'm going to try and run around and kill everything else while it's shooting me. I don't think I necessarily played it the right way, but I lost that one. I think it was actually not as badly as I thought I would, but I did lose, unfortunately. But there we go. Such is life. And your first game?
I played against the Custodes.
Oh, yes.
The one painted Custodes army there. Stephen Henry, lovely bloke.
I think we'll go into, talk a little bit about your game, and we'll go into, because a bit of a spoiler for later, but I played him as well. And we'll have a discussion on the Custodes army, the talons of the Emperor, a little bit later on. But yeah, just give us a small.
Well, it was terrifying. I mean, he just lined up loads of dudes on the 12-inch line right in front of me, in front of my defense line and my tanks, and then just ran at me, and I just couldn't stop them. But I was a bit lucky because obviously Custodes are quite expensive points-wise. He had an open flank, so I just drove a load of tanks up one flank, and I held the line with some dudes, and high points were probably killing Valdor with las guns. That was shortly before that part of my army just crumbled to men.
I think
but my tanks had broken free by that point and were in his deployment zone.
I suppose
which is the name of the game.
I suppose the Lehman Russ is quite good in that matchup.
Well, they just pump out a lot of strength 7 and 6 shots. So
yes, they're wounding all the time.
Custodes.
I think
we think
it started the fear for Stephen of Valdor being targeted by really weak weapons. I think it started him off for the event. Bless him. But yeah, no, it's a cool looking army as well. Really cool.
Yeah.
But it turns out that the traitors got royally thumped in that first round, and that put us right on the back foot. No, apparently not. Apparently we won like 1 or 2 games, which is all good fun. And then between the games, whilst we had a break, we had some food and whatever, and the organisers got together, worked out what had happened, and we had a briefing before the next game. So we were told, as I say, we got beaten back off the planets and various planets in the system, and we were going for a counter-attack on a particular world, and we were given our matchups there and then, told to go out to table 7 or whatever, and who we were playing. And again, I think we'll come back to kind of how that narrative fits in. But again, I had one of those, we had some chats on Saturday night, didn't we, with various people, and Sunday as well, about the nature of the matchup in Heresy. and the way some armies can be played that can make games not as involved and exciting as they possibly can be.
Yeah,
sometimes
a lot of people had that problem with some of the scenarios as well.
Yeah, and the scenarios certainly, in some cases, don't help, and that's made-up scenarios as well as some of the Forge World scenarios. You know, we're not pointing blame at anyone here. I'm sure my events have had a few scenarios that have done similar as well. And the second game was very much that. You had one of the four corners to deploying, and it was very tight in those corners. Which meant
it wasn't like 12 inches standing off from the centre line. It was you had like a tiny sliver of corner to put half your army in. Yeah,
it felt very small with half your army coming on. So at least half your army can come along anywhere on your long table edge. But again, when you've got, I was playing against the Imperial Fist army with, he had a couple of Contemptors in the normal Dreadnought, and he had Whirlwind Scorpius, and there was, it might have been a Typhon, but it was something like that anyway. But I'm sat there with a Knight Porphyrion, which can reach all the way across the table, to just keep pounding stuff. It felt a little bit like, but I've got to do it because that's my answer to some of those things. Oh, there was a Leviathan, I think it was Leviathan, 2 Contemptors. I've had trouble with Leviathans, and I had more trouble with them this weekend. So you're still going to try and pound it. And unfortunately, that meant I could do much more damage than he could those first few turns. And then when he brought his army on, it came on a bit piecemeal. And then, when the Mechanicum can get on top and start picking their targets, it can be really hard to kind of fight back against that. And particularly we've said many times that everything dies to infantry, particularly against Mechanicum can kill infantry like it's no one's business. And unfortunately, left with like Sigismund trying to run round and batter everything by himself, and even Sigismund cannot do that. But it meant the game wasn't necessarily, again, exciting. It was good fun. Had a good time with the opponent. Kind of wish the scenario and the matchup had allowed him to be a bit more of the part of the game. It was a combination of a few things that didn't allow that to happen. But how from my side, I don't let up because, I still have to kill these things because otherwise it can get on top of me. So there's that hard balance of what you're doing, I maybe don't go quite for the throat as I would, in a game that I know that I need to pull the stops out to have a chance in. But you can't just not play the game, as it were.
Yeah.
What about yourself?
So I played Dark Angels, lots of outflanking Land Raiders.
Oh, right, yeah.
And a Fellblade. But the deployment, it was obviously deploy first and go first, but only deploy half your army, and in the first turn you get the other half come on in reserves. It meant that I could just let the Dark Angels deploy, counter-deploy, and then let the rest of their army come on piecemeal, and then have a counter reserves come on.
Sure.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just like, well, I'll wait for you to have your turn to see what you've done, and then just go, oh, well, I'll put my tanks here then. I'll put this here then. And it kind of made it a bit of a non-game. Maybe I shouldn't have done that, but.
Yeah, again, we had that discussion, and it's hard to know what to do sometimes, because sometimes it's like, well, if you don't roll very well and you do this, then you open yourself up a little bit, but.
Yeah, it's like, he's leaving Russes in the middle of his army, basically, but they're there to do a job, and if they do that job, they're kind of safe, but if they fail, they're dead, but.
Yeah.
Turns out they didn't fail.
Yeah, and I think a little bit the scenario can kind of see what they were trying to do. I don't necessarily think it worked as well as they would want it to, but it's exacerbated by the army I played. So had I played a different army, it would have been a very different feel to that game. But it's unfortunate.
I think the same kind of deal with the army I took was maybe a bit not fitting for a narrative event as such.
Yeah, well, I think we'll move on to that.
If I had more choice of units, I probably would have not just loaded up on tanks.
Yeah, maybe. And we had a big doubles event, so this was designed an hour and a half before tea and or 2 hours before tea and 2 hours after tea or something like that.
Yeah.
I know that we hadn't rolled a dice before tea. We'd just about finished setting up. So ours went on quite late.
I think most of them didn't they?
Yeah. Well, so I think some were over quicker than others.
Yeah,
but
mine definitely was.
I was teamed up with the Alpha Legion, with Alfarius, so we were lucky we won the roll to see if we wanted to go first or second. And, of course, when you've got 4+ to steal re-rolling, you let the opponent go first. And sure enough, we stole. And that means this was the corner deployment, which actually means that a Knight Porphyrion with its 12-inch move can suddenly turn a lot of front arcs into a lot of side arcs. And we had to deploy aggressive because it was like, well, if we're going to win this, there's no point not making use of it. So it was like, right, okay, the Myrmidons are going up front and this is happening. And yeah, we won it. And all of a sudden, I think there were 3 or 4 Spartan or Spartan equivalents. There were 3 or 4 vehicles with 14 armor flare shields at the front. And there was some other Mechanicum stuff. I think they had some, in fact, Brendan might have had some more 14 armor flare shield at the front. And yeah, it was quite imposing. But as soon as you get around the side of it and, we got a lucky shot from a Venator, which did its job as well. Then all of a sudden you've got much better chances of getting through that armor. And then you've got Dreadnoughts, Terminators running across the table, which again is where Mechanicum just love it, and the Knight Porphyrion particularly.
Yeah, hard, don't you?
Yeah, just, it's dropping a strength 10 AP2 template in the middle of a unit of Terminators, even if they're spread out a little bit, it's a large template, you're going to hit a few of them. Goodbye, sweetheart. But they made a good effort, made a good fist of coming at us. And Brendan's army's pretty strong. His Voltarax came on in the end, and they're interesting, aren't they? 170 points
not bad, are they?
Model,
I think the discussion that weekend was, why would you take anything else in the fast attack slot?
Yeah, well, same points as a Domitar.
Same points.
Roughly.
Arl attacks.
Yeah, roughly. And just the fact that it's so much harder to take out because it's a flyer.
Yeah, well, it's never going to die, is it?
It's a flyer, strength 6 with an all-round flare shield. I mean, just that in itself.
Just top 7.
Yeah, that in itself is pretty awesome. And then, okay, we all know about the haywire shots, and they're great, and they're 360, and they're a bit, hard to deal with at times, hard to accept at times. But even then, if he goes back to his missiles, he was just pounding shots onto units. It's just dice and dice and dice and dice, and you're just like, these guys really can do anything.
Yeah, it's like 4 strength 5 templates.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it adds up. It builds up and up and up. And we were kind of discussing what you do with it, because you don't want to stop that kind of unit working the way it does, because that's the cool thing about it, and people will take it for those reasons. But I think the fact that you could go 360 meant that, his couldn't be anywhere near a Cortex controller. So what he had to do to be able to fire at my Knight was actually fly past my Knight and shoot backwards at it. And I think...
Yeah, the problem is on most flyers there's a dead zone, so it's kind of like, it comes on, it does its big thing, and it's like, well, if I get close enough, it's kind of harmless.
Yeah,
you can just shoot at dead target.
Or he has to hover. Yeah, or he can hover, and then you can kill it. Yeah?
Yeah.
But because he's 360, he doesn't have to do that. And I think if a very simple potential way of handling it is just to give it a 90-degree front arc. Or even a 180 potentially.
Even 180.
Yeah. But the fact that you can
at least when it's forced to move, It's kind of makes you
think
about where you're going to turn it, where you're going to put it.
Yeah, because there's no.
Otherwise, it's just like, I'll just put it anywhere. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean,
shoot this anyway.
You are limited by the fact that you probably won't have a Cortex controller in range, so you have to look at those limitations. But even then, with the range of movement you've got, that's not so difficult to have to deal with. So, yeah.
Yeah, because you can always fly back to a controller anyway.
Yeah, potentially, yeah. So, yeah, there's things about it. They are, everyone knows they're good. Everyone knows they're good. Are they the be all and end all? Maybe not, but they are very, very strong as a choice. When you look at something for those kind of points in the list, and you just think, well, why would you take anything else? Then there's an
that's the main problem.
Inherent imbalance in the list. And Brendan had 2 in the unit, and cool, fine, whatever. I had a Porphyrion, whether that's, filth or not, who knows. And there are other things. There are other things that are probably worse than the Voltrax that you can kind of do, but they are pretty good. But yeah, that game ended up with, well, the Death Guard didn't get much of a game, unfortunately, apart from 2 Leviathans streaking across the board and just destroying whatever they came into contact with, except for my Myrmidon Secutor Lord, who just hung around, just kept making his 5-up invulnerable. This Leviathan kept missing. I think it was 3 rounds. 3 rounds he survived against the Leviathan, and 2 of those rounds he was by himself. It was just the most immense fight, and both of us were like, I was like, awesome, I've survived, brilliant, you can kill me now. And he's like, awesome, I didn't kill you, you can't shoot me. And I'm like, oh no, awesome, I've survived again, I'm going to get to be able to shoot you. It was just like, it was one of those really strange moments. But yeah, poor Leviathan might have got a demotion. But those things just, they don't even need dreadnoughts to survive. They just soak up so much punishment. They are amazing.
Yeah. Not bad,
They are just phenomenal. Yeah, they're really good. And the kind of the climactic finish was Garrow charging into Alfarius, because Garrow's mission was to kill Alfarius, and he had nothing else that was going to do it, and neither was Garrow. So ended up with a spear shoved through him. As the only way that an enemy of the Alpha Legion should end up. But yeah, it was a long game. 7,000 points doubles when there's no objectives.
Yeah, it's kill points.
Yeah, is not the greatest because there's no incentive not to just push forwards and kill.
Which is what I found out in my game.
Yeah, what happened in yours?
So I was teamed up with new Thousand Suns,
all right,
which is
cool.
pretty cool. So looking forward to see what they can do. Up against Jens and Ben. So that was Dark Angels and Ultramarines with Solar Auxilia allies. So we had quite a small deployment zone again, and we had quite a lot of tanks again. So we held quite a lot of stuff in reserves. They had the first turn though. We put on a lot of stuff that could shut down their super heavies.
Sure.
Like we had a Cerberus and a Venator, and I put a couple of my super heavies on that quite hard to kill. Jens can roll dice like a madman. So the glaive rolls up, it shoots at the Cerberus, kills it in a oneer with 4 haywire hits.
Nice.
The Cerberus scatters into my Malcador, blows up, does a D hit on the Malcador. Jens then rolls a 6, takes the Malcador off in a oneer. Malcador scatters back into our lines, blows up, takes half my army off. And so I just went and played Cards Against Humanity, basically.
So was that one of those explosions that just defied the laws of, the laws of the RNG, or was it?
That was the Norse gods of old taking control of the dice begins.
Better to be lucky than good.
Yeah, definitely.
But is it one of those things where that tank is, 30% chance of it dying first turn?
I think they would have shot everything at it.
Right.
But I think the only thing that could have realistically killed it was the glaive
Sure.
from what they had on the board.
Okay.
But
Did you have
got.
Did you have a chance to move it before they shot it?
No, it was their turn 1.
Okay, their turn 1. And was it just a case of you were cramped together, or did you deploy blocked together?
No, we had a bit of space in our deployment zone, but again, it was like, we don't want to put everything on, because then we'll just be cramped up and we'll get a massive strength 8 AP2 beam through everything.
Yeah.
But we knew they were going first.
Yeah, so kind of what I'm saying is, you could have avoided it a little bit more. Because that potential is there.
Just could have put Cerberus right at the back in the corner.
I mean, even though it's unlikely for those chain of events to occur. I mean, how far did it scatter? Sorry? Can you remember?
Something like 10 inches forward to a Malcador that couldn't be seen.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, yeah, a 10-inch scatter is a bit unfortunate. Yeah, so maybe not as, because sometimes you see people, the point I was trying to get is sometimes you see people and they've deployed everything right next to each other and then they complain that their vehicles blow each other up.
It wasn't like that. It was one of those weird, it was one of those real moments where you just think, oh, okay, it's going to be like that, is it? The dice are going to do that, are they? Yeah, these things happen. So, how was the rest of the game, or was it just a case of mopping you up? What we chatted about at the table there and then was, if there are objectives, this wouldn't have been a bad thing. It would have been like, oh, we've lost a couple of key units, but, I've still got all my troops alive. They're still in transports. We can just skirt about. We can play the objective. But it was just like, oh, we're suddenly down on kill points. We've lost a lot of our killing power. Kind of what's the point? Like, we know we're going to lose from this point on because they're so far ahead of us in terms of firepower and victory points that it's like, well, we'll keep playing, but we know it's not going to end well for us.
Sure. Was it fun?
Yeah. We had a good time. We had a good laugh.
Yeah, I mean, every now and then you get a game where just the dice hate you. Whether they hate you or whether,
mad turn 1.
Yeah, and that's part of gaming with dice, isn't it? And you've got to laugh or you'd cry. So you've just got to accept that the weird and wonderful happens every now and then, particularly when you've got 6-sided dice. There's a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a 6. It's, it's not that unlikely for these things to occur. So,
not when Jens is rolling.
Well, even a 10 on 2d6, it's not that unlikely when you actually start to think about it. So, that's cool. And we finished quite late, and I was very conscious not to stay up too late. Some of the gentlemen there were drinking rather heavily, or had been drinking all day, to be fair to them, which was fine. No,
I had a Parmo.
You had a Parmo? Yeah, did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was horrible.
Oh, was it? Oh,
yeah,
right.
It wasn't very nice at all.
Okay, that will upset some of the Sons of Heresy guys. They thought it was the greatest thing ever.
They've got no taste, clearly.
Well, one of them is American, so that does explain. One of them follows Nurgle, so and the other one is a machine head. I think we've solved that one. Yep. I must admit, the food at the venue was really good. There was some stuff there that I knew I wouldn't eat, so when we did our trip to Tesco's, I always get some extra fruit for these kind of events as well, because I tend to find that I eat rubbish. But actually, some decent healthy, well, not healthy options, but certainly some veg was in there. It wasn't all fast food, was it? Which was good.
No, good.
Yeah.
It was good. It was nice food. Plenty of it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, tea on tap all day and drinks and then biscuits as well and little tuck shop. Yeah, really good. And I don't mind doubles, but I do find they tend to drag, particularly if you've got an opponent, if you've got either an opponent or an ally who's suffers a little bit from analysis paralysis or just a little bit of unsure, kind of, you need to kind of get on with the game a little bit. So I think, let's say 7,000 points without a direct kind of mission to achieve or something like that. It's maybe a little bit too much, but I mean, it was fun enough, but something maybe, certainly I won't be doing, having now played in that, I won't be doing that for my events. Not that big. If we did that, I'd have said maybe take it down to your base 2,000 point list.
Yeah.
And play with the 2,000 point lists, because then you've also got a lot of destruction on the table at 7,000 points. Yeah, there's a lot of destruction you can bring in a 3,500 point army. The other traitor army with the knight, with the Porphyrion, was quite a powerful list, and if you get paired up with that, you know that he's going to be putting out a lot of the firepower for you, and it could be harsh to be on the end of. But yeah, it was cool. And Saturday night was rather shorter. It was good to catch up with Ben, and we discussed a lot of things that I think are going to be discussed on the show's topics. The nature of rights of war, of armies, of power levels, of what we can do as a community, as event organisers, as players, to look at that. And that is one of the things about these kind of events that I really like, and particularly about having the beds just upstairs meant that you could just carry on having that chat without fear of like, oh, I've got to go back to bed at some point. It was just like, well, it's 2 minutes upstairs, so, oh look, it's 1 o'clock. Yeah, that'll do me. Okay, we'll go up to bed. But it's quite relaxed when you're all there just chatting, which I really like.
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent. And then Sunday. And Sunday for me, like Saturday was good, but for me didn't enlighten me. You know, I wasn't amazed by the gaming on the Saturday. I'm just talking about the gaming in that respect. It was good, but nothing better than good. Now Sunday was brilliant. Because I faced the Custodian army, so Stephen Hendry or Henry, wasn't it? Was it Hendry?
Yeah.
Henry. Oh,
Henry.
Apologies. So yeah, I was playing lengthways against this army in War of Lies, and she puts down like 4 units of shield dudes, and a Contemptor with a shield, 2 transports with spear dudes in them, 1 carrying Valdor, 1 carrying the other guy. What's his name?
The
Tribune, yeah.
Special model.
And Stephen, you know, this is where kind of, you know, he didn't bring the 3-up re-rollable dude. Keep the 3-up, won't put the re-rollable on him. Fair enough. Narrative event, doesn't feel he needs to do that. Actually, that's a simple thing which does make a difference to your opponent when they say things like that. So we had 2 transports for them, 2 of the medium tanks and 3 of the small tanks. And I was like, okay, cool, I reckon I can take this. And then, first turn, they're almost 12 inches across the board, everything, because they've got Crusader, and they're just running at you, because there's no point in not running at you. And you're like, oh, they're going to be on me really quick. And then he's shooting you, and it's like, oh yeah, that gun's instant death, so I can't let him shoot my Castellax. That gun's a toughness test or you die, so I don't really want them shooting my Castellax either. But that's fine, because they're on the things, they're not on the troop transports, and I really want to take out the troops transports. And I also don't want all these guys with shields reaching my lines. So you're like, I've got to kill everything? And you're like, I can't kill everything, because the 2 transports are front armor 14 flare shield. The medium ones are, they're 13 with a flare shield. Yeah. Either way, they felt, because my Porphyrion's got the big blast template, I knew it was almost no point me firing at them. You know,
and everything else is lance, isn't it?
Yeah, and even the little dudes, you know, it's flare shields on them, and they go jink, you know, because the little guys have only got 1 gun each, so they might as well jink every turn because they've got machine spirit. And even on the bigger guns, well, a lot of the time it's still worth jinking because 50% of your weapons are still firing at normal ballistic skill. And it's like, oh my word.
They're all twin linked anyway.
And they're all twin linked as well. And you're like, there's no stopping this lot. And they come pounding across the table. And I'm like, well, I have to move forwards a bit because I have to get all my guns in range. And then all of a sudden you pick off 1 custodian and you're like, yes! And I was leaving like, all his tanks had like, you know, half of his tanks were on like 1 or 2 hull points left. And I'm like, I just can't get everything in line of sight of it all because he's positioned them quite well. And it's like, oh. And then all of a sudden you pop them open and you're like, brilliant. Oh no, 5 guys have got out. And I've still got to worry about these shield dudes in front of me. And probably the turn that saved me was when I managed to make one of the custodian units run away for a turn. And I blinded it. and I blinded Valdor's unit as well. So Valdor and his unit of spears went down to weapon skill, ballistic skill 1, which meant that next turn they charged into combat, they did nothing. And I was like, result, I'm going to hold on for like 2 turns, get to shoot him again. But yeah, it was, as you say, you feel under pressure that whole game, and it's not
a real slog, isn't it?
Yeah, but in a good way. It's not like any other 30k army I've played. Like the Death Guard will come across the board at you, but you're like, okay, that's just some dudes. Okay, Terminators are a bit powerful, got to stop the tanks, but this, the shield bearing custodians, just the troops are going to wipe out units, and you're like, I need to hit them with stuff, and you hit them with a las cannon, and they roll a 5-up rerollable invulnerable save and save it, and you're like, oh, did nothing. Or even if it does go through, it's not instant death. And you're like, oh, my word. Yeah. Okay, yeah, awesome. Wow.
It hurt that man. Yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah, and then he starts moving units, making lookout sails and passing wounds around the unit. And cool, I'm all down with that. And it was like, wow, this is getting hard work. But if he does that, eventually you start picking wounds off and going through the unit quite quickly then. So, it's got its advantages and disadvantages. But, yeah, it's really interesting game to play where my Porphyrion really came into its own because it's putting a number of those 5-up rerollable saves. And not as many as you would normally because they've got 3 inches flipping between each unit, between each model. But I can fire it at tanks and the dudes, and every failed save is a removed custodian. And that's huge. Because it's like, brilliant, that's one whole model gone. And then the other really good thing was he started to get worried about my Vorax with their poisoned rotor cannons.
Oh, I see. I call that the lasgun effect.
Yes, exactly, because I started to tell him I was going to take Valdor down with the rotor cannons. But 24 shots, hitting on 2s, wounding on 4s, on custodians. Eventually, first time I opened them up, I took a custodian down, and he's like, wow, I didn't expect that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe about right, give or take. But actually, it's still 24 shots. That's one unit of 3 Vorax have done 2 units, 2 wounds to that unit. And it feels like nothing. But to him, to Steve, it was like, oh no, I've lost a dude in that unit. Like that unit's effectiveness has now been like quartered. So it's a real.
And then it's like Leadership 9 morale tests, which are a bit shaky at times.
Yeah, but if you're within 12 of a banner, that's fine. You re-roll that.
Yeah.
But and those banners are then giving you +1 to the combat res. The shields are making you -1 to hit him, so my poor Vorax are trying to hit him. It's not easy. And say the other side of it, Valdor eventually is not blind anymore and he's just ripping units apart. It was really good. We ended up getting to the end of the game. Not one of us had time to even consider getting on an objective because he had to kill enough of my dudes to stop me killing him. And I had to just survive to try and kill him. And that was it. So we had no objectives, and it was 8-7 victory points to me. And we didn't even know. We're sitting there going, right, what have you killed? My HQ's backing up as quickly as possible, trying to get out the way, throwing his thralls forwards to die at Valdor's feet. But yeah, 8-7, and it was the most unique game of 30k I've had. It was different from everything. And that might not be the case going forwards when we get jet bikes, when we get some of the other units, the heavier dreadnought. I don't know how the army's going to perform. But if someone brings that type of list that Stephen bought, then it's going to be fun. Now, I don't necessarily want to see 12 of them at every event, but it was good fun. Really was. And that started my Sunday morning off brilliantly. But yeah, that's me raving about the Custodes. What did you play Sunday morning?
I played against Iron Warriors. Yes, with a Falchion.
All right.
Lengthways, again, as you said. So the Falchion was at the back, just hitting me with a D every turn. But we've been talking to Ben on the Saturday night about how to play with an army of tanks.
Yes.
and we think you just push it all forward.
Well,
because that's how it should be played.
Yeah,
so that's exactly what I did.
So yeah, just before you do it, Ben was specifically talking about the armoured breakthrough rite of war, and the clue there is in the breakthrough part of that is that the idea of that army is it's supposed to just plough forwards and break through the enemy. But almost everyone plays it, break through my 6 inches of my deployment zone, and then stay there and shoot everyone, which is understandable to a point, but it creates a very different game when you push the tanks forward. So you decided to do that, yeah?
Yeah, I just went, just go round some things. I haven't used the Thunder Blitz table much, so I've got three models that can do that. So
oh, wow.
Got to roll some dice on that table.
And how did that game go?
Yeah, it went alright, actually. I lost the Stormblade to a 6 on the D chart.
Oh.
I lost a couple of Lima Russes to 6s on the D chart, but I had more tanks than him, so in the end.
Weighed him down. And
got my commander in combat with some Marines.
Filth.
It was all good.
Little human man, better than any Marine.
He does have 2 power.
Oh, I hate him. So how was it playing that different style?
Yeah, it was good fun, actually. I mean, the problem with the auxiliary army is you just sit behind a defense line and shoot like a guard army, and it does get very stale.
Yeah,
So it's fun. It's fun to play it like a World War One, jump out of the trenches, sit behind the tanks, slowly go up the board.
Cool. Yeah, maybe a way of playing an army that is less interesting per se. We've said, we've talked a number of times about it. It very much either works or it doesn't work, and it's very kind of binary in the way it plays, the way that it sits back and plays, and maybe just pushing the tanks around a bit certainly engages your opposition a little bit more than they would normally. Because I don't think anyone minds losing, just as long as they have a game.
Yeah, definitely. The problem with it is, it's very rock, paper, scissors.
Yeah.
So, if you come up against someone that can't deal with armor, then you don't have to do anything. I can just roll dice at my opponent and neither of us is going to have fun. But
you love it, don't lie.
Well, yeah, I know. It's alright. It's not bad. It's getting a bit boring now.
Sure.
It's been 3 years of doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But then, again, if your opponent can take your tanks off, then I'm going to sit there with a fad on and be like, oh, this is great. But it's my own fault, really.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's your fault. I mean, the army is limited in that respect. It's not like you've
typical
got...
guard army.
And
unit roster is just full of tanks.
And I always felt that Guard missed out by not making Rough Riders better than they were, just so that you had some incentive to take some stuff which moved forwards. Some scouting units, things like that. They're never quite worth it compared to the tanks. So,
it's almost as if the auxiliary and militia need to kind of be merged together. So you kind of got access to sentinels, and you can have more crazy Ogrin and stuff like that. But,
well, in the theory, isn't that more of a normal guard army, an imperial army? Which, although the militia represents aspects of the imperial army, it's not really an imperial army. I don't feel, but yeah, maybe it's something that can be looked at. Maybe you could do it with the Allies matrix to an extent. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe it's something to be looked at. But yeah, cool. So at least you kind of made a game of it and take some models off, take some of his models off.
Yeah, we had a laugh.
Yeah,
good.
That's cool.
I got some objectives that weren't worth any victory points. That's great.
Classic.
Classic
Brilliant.
warlock.
Yeah, too right. I don't really mind it, to be honest. Yeah, and then last game, I realised we've not talked about the narrative too much, and yeah, we'll go into that again, as I say. The last mission was the traitors were on the back foot, and the loyalists were on the back foot, and the traitors were going in to get them, and the loyalists were defending in this mission. Now, this mission, unfortunately, so they were in the ambush scenario. They were in the centre. And they had to set up first. And it was half your army again, half with reserves. Now, there were no instructions on going first on this one because they'd written everything up in the pack. So I kind of asked, who's going first? Is it deployment? And we were told to roll off. On reflection, I think we should have just gone with, I played Jason from Sons of Heresy. I should have just gone with, unless I roll a 6, you're going first. Because even though he's got a Spartan and 2 Malcadors, and the Malcadors are back to back, I can put a Knight Porphyrion down and he can move 12 inches and avoid the flare shields and avoid the cover.
Yeah.
And that was, the Spartan did last more than one turn, but it was immobilized turn 1, so I wasn't too disheartened. And the Malcadors took sustained fire, shall we say. It still took 2 rounds to kill them because they're Malcadors, but the fact that Russ and his bodyguard had to get out, and that one bodyguard went to kill my Krios, which was causing damage on his Spartan. I would have just killed it quite happily. Problem is you can't sweep in advance out from a tank, can you? So Knight Porphyrion just drops 2 templates, does 19 strength, 10 AP 2 hits on or something stupid like that. Yeah, take all those Varric. No, he had Russ. It's fine. And that kind of the Malcadors went down turn 3, and that was kind of it in terms of the game, because we'll go on to the win conditions in a bit. But the game then became, what can Russ kill? And as he came chasing across the board, I'd watched the game on the Friday night when Jason had forgotten half his rules, and worked out that if Russ is alive with his 2 wolves, you want to take those wolves out as quickly as possible, because he can look out onto either of the wolves, he can look out onto his own unit, so he can really play around with where he's putting wounds. So all my rubbish weapons shoot those wolves, get them out of the way, and then hopefully my better weapons can shoot Russ. Unfortunately, those wolves don't...
it kind of ends up like Russ himself absorbs all the one-shot big guns.
Yeah.
He throws all the small arms fire onto the wolves, and if he takes loads of
big shots, he distributes
big shots. He just throws it onto the unit and goes, I don't care about these Terminators, they can take it.
Yeah, or, because you're doing it one at a time, you're playing around with it. I'll take this one on Russ. Oh, Russ hasn't lost a wound yet, I can keep going, Or a las cannon shot, actually, on a wolf, he's still getting a 5-up, feel no pain. So, and he's got 4 wounds and he's toughness 5, so it's not going to kill him. So actually, they can take las cannon shots for Russ. So you need to kind of be aware of what is around Russ that whole time. And eventually I killed the 2 wolves, and the wolf priest that was giving him his 5-up invulnerable, was down to 1 wound, and then he started putting all his wounds onto Russ, and Russ kept saving them, and it was, the shenanigans that you can do with that, I didn't have an issue with per se, but you need to be aware playing it of what you're doing and the order you're doing things in. And what really hurts then is Russ gets into combat. There's only 2 models, and I thought that I went on a mind fart back to 5th edition or whatever. Where I was like, oh, I'm in base contact with an independent character. That means I specifically hit that independent character. No, you hit the majority weapon skill.
Only if you challenge him.
Yeah, the majority weapon skill and toughness of the unit. So, brilliant. These 2 characters are weapon skill 9, toughness 6. Joy. So you can't even... You're struggling then
There's
to
2
take...
Russes now.
Yeah, and you're struggling to take out this wolf priest who's given the 5-up, feel no pain, which is the real kicker, And eventually did take him down, but the game ended up with... I got Russ down to 2 wounds, he got 1 back. I was kind of being goaded to charge my HQ in to see if he could do anything, and the answer was no. But he did survive 2 rounds against the Russ. Mainly thanks to his sword ability needing to roll higher than the toughness. And once you get a Magus Dominus, Archmagus Prime with Machinator Array and things, he's toughness 6. And he took a while to kill, but he certainly wasn't going to do anything back to us. That was for sure. But yeah, it was a fun game. Had a brilliant game against Jason. There was lots of shouting and lots of kind of, does this work? Does that work? Rah! And then at the end of the game, Jason kind of went, how many points have I got? And I was like, 7, because you killed a warlord. And he's like, how many points did you get? 45. I was like, what? And that was a case of, I think they wanted it to be decisive one way or the other, in that this was the final push, and it creates an end to the narrative of, either the loyalists repelling their attackers or being crushed. Unfortunately, I think as your game goes to prove, it was probably always going to be a traitor victory.
So I played Brendan, also from Sons of Heresy, and he obviously had to deploy 7 units, I think it was, in the middle of the board.
Yeah.
And then I got to counter deploy, and then I won the roll for taking first turn.
Ugh.
So, okay, I'll just take those 7 units off then.
Yeah.
Which was, kind of the problem with the scenario again was not having, or having a fixed deployment, but a random who goes first.
Yeah.
It just, and with the scoring as well.
Yeah,
it just meant that. Do you want to talk about it, the score?
Well, I think the first thing is that scenario is designed so that, 5 out of 6 times that defender's going first. So if the attacker has split their forces, they can drive away from one of those forces, and that will limit how much fire they're taking. And as soon as the defender goes first in that, actually both sides are engaged, and then the defender has to think, do I turn my rear to part of their army or what? And it's not easy then to counteract that.
It just turned into like a really weird hodgepodge where it's like, oh well, I'll kill all this, but then you'll bring on these models to kill my thing, and then I'll bring on my model over here to kill your thing. And it was really weird, like, the reserves just come on to do a specific job, and then they're just like, oh, I'm done with them now, I don't need that model anymore.
I mean, your reserves should come on from your short table edges. There is a little bit.
Yeah, but you get a choice of either short table edge. He gets a choice of either long table edge.
Yeah. And you really have to put them in the middle, and even then you're not necessarily out of range. But so, and the idea was, so the defenders got 3 points for every unit left alive at the end of the game. And the attackers got 3 points for every unit they killed at the end of the game. So this meant when I played, because I had 2 individual defense turrets, and I chose to leave them in my reserves, because I knew that if I didn't get first turn, I couldn't afford to have like a couple of the units. There was no unit I could afford to have off the table at the start of the game if Jason went first. So I just allowed those 2 unmovable units just to die, because they weren't going to do a lot and they didn't cost me any points.
Yeah.
Which is a bit crazy. And yours was
it's like I just found myself throwing, I don't need this Stormblade anymore, I'll just throw it into something to get 3 victory points for me. Because even if it dies, it's like, it's not worth anything. Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a problem having that as a, killing stuff.
It does kind of make sense. It's like, traitors just want to throw everything they've got to try and wear down the opponent.
Yeah, maybe. And again, if their design was to have a definitive victory one way or the other, it certainly created that. I do think maybe those points could have been altered. So there could have been more points for having units left alive for the defender, and less points for killing units for the attacker, or some other bits and pieces. There are things you could do potentially, but then it's a narrative event. It's not an even tournament per se. So it just I felt a little bit kind of bad in that there was no way you were winning this, Jason. Like, just keeping my Porphyrion alive would have probably got me almost enough points to win the game, just because it will continually kill bits and pieces. So I don't know. It's one of those things.
Yeah, and similarly, it was just like, well, I only need to kill half your army plus 1 unit. I basically did that in the first turn, so, as long as I get one more thing, it's GG. And me and Brendan did talk about that, and then we just went, oh well, we'll just have a break now. I'm going to go take some pictures, and I had a couple of cups of tea and wandered around, see what's going on.
Yeah, and I suppose if you know that, you can just play on the game to try and, get like a sense of honour back or whatever. But yeah, But my second day, I had two absolutely brilliant games. I say that the scenario in that last one might not have been engaging, but the game was engaging, which was really good. And I had a great time. The traitors ended up taking it, as we said. How did you feel that the narrative came across? So every game we were told kind of what was going on in the sector. As I say, the loyalists got beat back a bit and then came back. The traitors got beat back and then came back into it as we went on. But what did you think of how that was put across?
Well, we were told a lot of stories and told what was happening, but then we weren't really involved.
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I feel the same. It was cool.
Yeah, so we were kind of told like, oh yeah, you've won this, guys. We're going onto this planet to do such and such, but then here's the matchups. It's not like, oh well, so you're fighting him because, or we need someone to fight against the Thunderhawk or to fight against the Warhound. It was just like, oh, we've just done these matchups, and it seemed a bit arbitrary, and I think that's where the engagement was lost a bit. Yeah,
and it's this isn't not a criticism. This is a point going forwards, which I think they can improve on. And having met the guys a couple of times now, I'm sure they will. As you say, there was a story. However, I was under the impression that we would have a bit more either say or that the narrative would inform our games a bit more.
Yeah.
And that felt a little bit disjointed to me, to the point where I was like, I don't really, I'm fighting here. Okay, I'm fighting on table 7. I wasn't really aware that I was fighting on the, it didn't help I played 3 times on one table, but it didn't help, didn't really notice that I was fighting on this mine world or whatever, because there was no rules or there wasn't anything to define that within the game itself. I think I was under the impression, maybe I misread it, that people would be able to pick out like the Thunderhawk. Like not maybe every game, but maybe 1 or 2 games that people would say,
like after game 1 in our team briefing, we were asked like, oh, who wants to play against the Thunderhawk? Who thinks they can kill it? And I put my hand up because I did it before to dank work. But then it was like, oh, no, we'll just do them randomly, all the matchup.
Yeah, I don't think they were randomly.
Fine,
I think that they were possibly designed as matchups, which is fine, but it was just a little bit unclear. And actually, I think what I really think it didn't do was it didn't follow through the great work they'd done in the setup, because they put so much effort in. So it's not, we're not having a go at them for it. It's just a thing maybe going forwards. Like they've done so much work in setting up this system with all these planets, and it's like maybe just incorporating that either into the game, either a rules mechanic on each table, to represent that world, or the odd little bit of, when the loyalists are on top, they maybe get to pick 1 or 2 matchups. Something like that would enhance it even more. But it was cool. It was cool. They worked this interweaving story, so we did know that, as the traitors were pushed back, and then they chose 2 specific worlds to really counter-attack on, and that kind of thing was going on. I think they selected the games to be either narratively kind of work or power level work. That first game, Porphyrion versus Warlord, versus Warhound, I can see why they do it. I don't think they're a match. I think actually, when you look at some of the other armies there, maybe some of the Armoured Breakthrough kind of lists might have been more suitable, just because they've got more options to deal with it.
Yeah, possibly.
The other thing I always find is, and you completely understand why, but when people say, okay, first matchup's going to be completely kind of fluff based. oh, there's 1,000 Suns player and one Space Force player, so they're obviously playing each other. And it's like, that's fine every now and then, but you know that that's going to happen almost every time. So the Imperial Fist player will almost always play the Iron Warriors player, and the Word Bearer will play the Ultramarine. And it's like, actually, there's valid fluff reasons for every army to play every army. So feel free to mix it up, you know. And it's fine while only a few places have done it, but as more and more do that kind of thing, if that becomes the norm, that people look to the really easy option, as it were, or the classic.
No one had really seen Space Wolves or Battle Bunnies yet, had they?
And it's fine. And as I say, it was fine here. It was absolutely fine. The Blood Angels playing the Demons. But as I say, in 2 or 3 years' time, I can see me going to an event somewhere in England. Not saying these guys, I'm saying anywhere. And turning up, and it's like, oh, there's one Imperial Fist player and one Iron Warriors player. They're playing each other first game. Okay, you know. But there's no reason why the White Scars can't be playing the Sons of Horus. You know, it's just there's plenty of narrative basis for it. But it made me chuckle. That was all. I was kind of looked around the tables. I was like, oh yeah, I could have guessed his opponent, and I could have guessed his opponent. But it was cool. It was really cool. The venue was great, as we've already said. The narrative, the actual narrative they made was really good. There were a few issues with kind of the scenarios, like how does this work? What does this work? But there were minor things. You're always going to have something like that, an event like that, and they were answered fairly quickly.
Yeah.
Apart from that, there seemed to be no major issues. Everything kind of worked. There was no.
Yeah, it was very smooth, wasn't it?
No big hold-ups. No,
Excellent organisation.
I think again, having the event on site means you've got a bit more time in the day as well.
Yeah.
You know, people are waking up, going 2 minutes downstairs rather than coming in from their hotels, so everyone was there on time. That helps a lot to finish on time, to allow them that half hour between, at lunch to organise the next matchups, that kind of thing. Really does help. The girls cooking the food did a great job, and everyone was really welcoming. I thought it was cracking, really.
Yeah.
Kind of, I say, the biggest thing is it's made me think about maybe having a smaller event down here and doing the same kind of thing, which is, it's imitation, one of the best forms of praise, isn't it?
The only problem with it was 6.5 hours away.
Yeah, so, for those who don't know, I'm pretty much direct central London, south. Follow that south to the coast. That's pretty much where I am. So, and Durham's way up north, almost up to the big wall before you get to the wild things. Wildlings beyond the wall, yeah. And they all speak funny up there. And we did have a horrible journey up. It was grim. It was constant rain, constant fog all the way up. But actually,
died a couple of times.
Yeah, it's all part of the journey. But actually, on the way home, it was quicker for us to get, or just as quick for us to get from there as it is Stockport. Just because
we stopped in Nottingham, had a Hooters.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I come home from Stockport, invariably we've got all the Man U fans coming home to Surrey. So, you get held up in that extra traffic. So, you know what? I've always felt it's a long way to drive. Once you go past Nottingham, that's a longish way to drive. And it was like another 3 hours on top of that. It was like, really? But it wasn't too bad. Whenever we go north, we've got to take the Friday off anyway. So not a major issue in that respect. And the beauty of it was, when the guys first put the event on, they said, do you want to come? And I was like, Durham's a long way. And then I looked at the event, and it was £45 for the weekend. So that's your event, your lodgings, and 5 meals. 6 meals? 5 meals? Plus, you can bring your own drinks onto site and all that. So it's not like it's an event centre where you're paying £1 a Coke, which is not a problem because those event centres need to make money. But then, so it's £45 plus fuel to get up there. Actually, that was a good £100 cheaper than we'd normally have an event each, wasn't it?
Oh, easily.
I don't drink, so for Joe, that's probably more. Yes. So the value for what we did on that is actually means that they've just literally just put up a placeholder for next year for their next event in March, and it's like, yeah, put my name down because I can travel 2 hours away. In fact, we're going to the South Coast Grand Tournament, 2 hours away. I've already spent more booking the hotel room than we spent at Durham for the whole weekend. And it's 2 hours away, two and a bit hours away. So yeah, it works out. It makes sense to do it. And I have no problem if the ticket price went up to 55 or 60 quid because only through listening to the Sons of Heresy, they kind of basically broke even. And I'm like, you know what? I've got no problem if your event makes a little bit more money and then you spread that out.
Yeah, and then they can expand it and get more terrain.
I wonder if, I think the girls were their partners, and I wonder if they did it for free. I don't know if they got paid or got recompensed in any way. You know what? They've been there all weekend. No, I don't think any of us mind if they get a few quid for doing it or a thank you or whatever
Absolutely
it is.
not.
And for the sake of £10 on everyone's ticket, that's another 300 quid, which can be used either for, as you say, for either thanking those people for extra trophies, because I got a cool mug. Apparently I wrote the best story, which was basically me blinding Valdor so he couldn't do anything whilst everyone else ran away. But, they had best sports and best traitor. I was a bit confused with how we voted for those a little bit. I think maybe clarity on those going forwards because we didn't have much input into who was doing what. So it was a bit arbitrary over who got the worst matchups and things.
Yeah.
But yeah, they could, that's money they could put into all those things or even just, getting some extra stuff for the event, making, I don't know, objectives or special things or whatever, use the money. Even if it's just put it in your pocket. Thanks for running a cool event. No one's got a problem with it. So yeah, really cool. So next March, you up for going again?
Yeah, definitely. Same time.
Yeah.
Same dates.
Late 20 something. Yeah. I certainly think a couple of the guys from the club might be interested purely because it's that much cheaper. There's a lot of stuff to put in the car, but again.
Oh, it's the day. Oh, it runs across my birthday. That's amazing.
Wow.
23rd to 25th.
Okay, we'll have to try and guarantee you a ticket out there, won't we? You have to get in there quick.
They've invited me, so I'm going.
Oh, right, awesome. Yeah, so we'll hit Durham again, or the little village just outside Durham, or just outside the little village just outside Durham.
What was it? Dragonville?
Dragonville, yeah, we went to Dragonville. The Tesco's in Dragonville. Who'd have thunk it? Here be dragons. But yeah, no, absolutely brilliant time. Couldn't understand some of the people up there very well, but but it was good. It was good to meet up with Max from Road to Terror because I've never met him vaguely sober before, and there's a
and you still haven't.
Well, no, he was slightly sober for part of it, and there was a very different impression of him when he's sober and when he's off his nut. But no, it was good. It was really good. And I look forward to the next one, really. Anything else about the venue, the event, before we sign off?
Next year I want to throw some axes.
You want to throw? Yes, next year we'll have to make sure we get out there nice and early on the Friday to throw some axes. We were going to talk about your. So we alluded to it as we went through. You're looking at changing from solar auxiliary anyway, aren't you?
Yeah, I've got custodians in front of me now.
In front of you now, and some and some soulless witches to go with them as well.
Yes.
Yeah,
plenty.
cool. And that's because you want a different, more engaging game style.
Yeah, I want to run across the table and hit people with swords.
Yeah, it certainly is a very different way of playing the game. I must admit, my Porphyrion, I think it survived 3 out of 5 games, and it does a very good job when people let it do a very good job. So, when they have lots of troops out and don't really spread out too much, things like that. But actually, where people were worried about it destroying vehicles, it's not as it doesn't reliably destroy vehicles as people think it should. Because it's only
AP2.
Yeah, you can't fire it.
Night FAQ, you can't actually fire both guns at the same tank unless the tank's really long or really wide.
Whatever. But also, you can't fire at flare shields because you go down to strength 8. So even if you've got a 13 front armor, you're hunting for 5s. Yeah, you got ordnance, but you're not playing the averages doing that, are you? But getting around the side of stuff, 2 hearts bliss. Sorry?
You're on like 50% to get a glance or a pen?
Yeah, and a glance is, what's a glance worth? Not a lot of the time, is it? So, particularly when you're firing a big gun like that, I could be destroying that whole unit of infantry, or 50% of the time I might glance a vehicle. When you get round the flank, even then, I must admit, first few games I kept forgetting it was twin-linked, which does help. But you're getting, 2 hits on something? Yes, your ordnance, but again, even on the side of stuff, it's like, because it's AP2, a lot of the time you are just, immobilizing something can be really useful, but half the time you're not even doing that, or a third of the time. So it's not as destructive as I think some people thought it would be. It's very good, but I think her mind sat in about 520 points, I think. And you know what? I think it's worth about 520 points. It's never going to come on and... If someone wants to go at it with the right tools, they'll kill it. Simple as that. But, it's cool. It's cool. I like it. I need to get it properly finished now because it does look good on the table. But I need to get it a base as well. And march around because you're always a bit worried it's going to fall over. But it's cool. And we'll see how it'll be interesting to see how it does in a night army. That might be a different thing.
Well, it's kind of the thing that a night army's lacking. It's a bit of shooting.
Yeah, proper big shooting. We shall have to see. So I will have to get all my knights painted up, I suppose, when I get back from Adepticon. Add it to the list of things to do. Brilliant. Okay then, Joe. I think we'll leave that there. I think we've covered the event roughly. Didn't want to go. We've been talking for an hour and a bit at the end of the day, but we really enjoyed it. And look, so we've already said we want to go to the next one. So that's, you always judge people by their wallet, and we're prepared to pay the money. So that's all good. We don't even know how much it is or what they're planning.
Just like, it's on my birthday. I'm going. What's happening?
Sort it. Excellent stuff. Another long drive up. It'll all be fun. Awesome stuff. Cheers for coming on, Joe. And
no problem.
We'll grab you on the show again at some point, I'm sure. So joining us for this section, we have Drake from the Battle Bunnies group. Do you want to tell us, first of all, what the Battle Bunnies are?
Well, we're a gaming group which has been around for about 6 years. We basically pride ourselves on trying to do the best we can possibly do within the Horus Heresy series and also other specialist games areas. I think we're all a like-minded group of people. We have, I think it's currently 9 contributors, including my brother Kalo, and we've got Lady Atia on board as well. And we just blog and report our progress every single week to show what we've been up to, and we also report from all of the shows and stuff from Games Workshop around the country, from obviously the Horus Heresy Weekender, where we get a lot of views and a lot of comments, and basically our readers go through the roof at that point.
Yeah,
and then it does. And then we also try to also be like a medium for the people who can't attend these events, who want to ask certain questions about where the direction of the Horus Heresy series is going.
Sure.
So they say, hey, can you ask about obviously shoulder pads for this army. And you're like, okay, yeah, we generally know what the answer's going to be already, but we try to get the answers and try to get try to give them a bit of a voice, even though they can't attend these events.
Awesome.
So that's one of the things we do. But the other thing is, we all are a really good, like-minded group of people who just want to do the hobby justice. So we want to make sure we do every sort of a battle report to a decent standard with, decent images. I don't know if you've ever seen any of ours. We do a lot of, reports with explosions, speech marks, and all of that. And, everything's got to be painted. We've got to have a table free of dice when you take photos.
Sure, right, yep. So that's all. So is that you just pushing yourselves to do the best of your ability?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Because I think when you first get into the hobby, you always see all these beautiful tables set out in White Dwarf and all these beautiful painted miniatures. And, when you first get into it, sometimes you don't achieve that. You get like a pack of men, you glue them together, you think, oh no, I'll stick a hunter killer missile on that Terminator's head and it'll look great. But generally, you got to, eventually you get to that stage where you're like, oh, I want my stuff to look like what their stuff looks like.
Sure.
And, so that's the reason why we sort of really started priding ourselves on the blog, because we all wanted we want to be regarded as people who did the hobby justice.
Sure.
And, I think that's the reason why we've got a lot of our readers, and a lot of them they actually engage with us when it comes to, like, one of our features, which is, the weekly progress report. You always say what we finished the previous week. So it's like, oh, okay, this week Drake's worked on this, this week Lady Atty has worked on that, this week, Spectre's achieved this, and we all show what we've been up to. Or we might even say, oh no, life got in the way, we couldn't achieve anything this week. But we always show that we're constantly moving forwards with it and trying to get to a few end goals about, we want to go through every single black book and make sure we do them all to a decent standard. So, we're all building our forces up at the moment currently. We've been doing that for a very long time, it feels like, but.
Doesn't it just, yeah?
Yeah, we'd never get to that. You never get to playing as many games as you want to do, unfortunately.
No, yeah, become adults and life hits you.
That's it.
So, key for me there is, so, your aim is not to have necessarily, try and make this, not use the wrong words here, not necessarily to have the greatest armies ever, but to push yourselves to always be the best that you can be.
That's definitely it. Always try to go for that.
And that's what I like, is it's attainable. Everyone can be the best that they can be. And I think it always shows as well that, when someone tries, you can't describe when someone's not trying, but when you see it, you know it.
Oh yeah, that's it.
Excellent.
That's definitely
cool.
the case.
Yeah, so that's really good. That's, something that anyone can, as we say, anyone can strive to do that. So you had this group of people. How did the blog come out of that? Was that a way of just documenting it, or?
Well, originally, when it first started, we were only into Warhammer 40,000, obviously, because it was 6 years ago. That's when it was, the Horus Heresy wasn't around. But we started reporting about what we did, and we created a forum for us to show our progress, and also we wanted to report our battles and actually tell stories, because we're very narrative as well. So me and my brother were really keen on setting up stories to fight along and create characters to battle through the odds to achieve an objective. But then we always wanted, as everyone did, I think back in about 7 years ago, they always wanted to have the Primarchs. They always wanted to see the Primarchs return. And when I remember one night I was sitting there in my bed and I saw the Horus Heresy teaser video for the first time, and I just it blew my mind, and I immediately started just trying to talk about it on all the forums out there, and then eventually I thought to myself, well, we all just basically chose legions and decided what we're going to do, and then went from there.
All right, cool. So, I mean, handy that you've got a group of people who. But then, how long had you been playing before you decided to do all that anyway?
Okay. Well, I'm 33 now, so I started with Rogue Trader the 01, the
Cool.
first.
You were young when you started.
Yeah, it was. I actually remember going out to my friend's house, and he used to have Adeptus Titanicus on the table, and we used to play with that. But obviously at that age, you just want to just hold the miniatures and go, oh my god, what can I do with it? But I bought the box game. Well, I bought Space Crusade and tried to get my dad to help me learn the rules, but he never had the time. So in the end, he just started buying all these just box after box after box of miniatures, and I didn't have a clue about it. So I did technically get into it second edition when I was when I first started playing. But yeah, and I think at that age we were still. Yeah, everything has to be painted. Everything needs to look great.
Wow.
But back in those days, I remember I got a Land Raider, and I painted it. I don't know if you know the old colour schemes, but I painted it Space Wolves Grey, which is obviously that really dark, really, really cyan colour. And then I painted. I then thought to myself, that looks wrong. So I actually dry brushed the darker shade over the top of it.
Wow.
And it looked absolutely terrible. So I was just like, that's completely wrong.
I might have to try and find the Space Wolf character I painted Space Wolves Grey when I applied for management position at GW a number of years ago. Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't great.
Oh, well, that's the good thing is you always got this really good support in the White Horse, and you can always read these new painting guides and. Oh yeah, you can do this. You can achieve it by, pushing yourself and using this technique. And this new paint's come out. It can do this. And I was always quite interested in that. But then, I think what really sort of got me was when the Horus Heresy first came around. I was like, okay, well, if there's all these great painters out there for the Horus Heresy, and it's a lot less edge highlighted than, the what's it called, the heavy metal teams work.
Sure.
I'm not saying it's better or worse, but it was I always find the chipping effect is a lot more achievable than the edge highlighted effect.
It takes a lot less time.
It does, yeah. And I decided I wanted to do my Death Guard Legion to a decent colour scheme, to a decent standard. So I really pushed myself, and I bought the 2 Horus Heresy Masterclass books before they came out. No, sorry, not before they came out. Not Horus Heresy Masterclass. The Forge World Masterclass books. Yeah. And I decided to sort of work from them, and with a lot of advice from Matt Kane as well, obviously, who you must know as well.
Yeah, well, I think everyone knows who Matt Kane is now in the Horus Heresy environment.
And I painted my Death Guard Sicaran, and I won an award for it, which I was so proud about. One of my most proud moments ever. That was
awesome.
And I got the Horus Heresy Weekend, the Best in Show for it. And I was dead chuffed.
Yeah, blimey, cool. That's going back a bit.
Yeah, that was about 3 years, 2013, I think that was.
Yeah, no, I remember that now. Yeah, all right, cool, awesome. So you've grown up with this group, and obviously, when it comes to having a blog with multiple people on it, that you can share a certain burden, the workload across that. Oh yeah,
that's the best thing about it. we have this constant messaging thread between us in, I think it's a Facebook Messenger, and we're talking constantly throughout the day. We're always discussing new things or analysing new releases that might be coming out. And if there's any, if we know because we actually have a posting schedule, so we'll say, okay, this week, this person's posting this day, and we take it in turns. But when one person can't do it, they immediately say, oh, okay, unfortunately I can't post today. So, we put that post up to the group and say, who wants to do this one? Oh, we've got this slot available. And most of the time, 9 times out of 10, there's somebody who will go, yeah, actually I can do that. I've just finished this, and I can do a work in progress picture of this new model I've just been painting. So cool. we try to keep our content up. So we try really hard to get at least one post done a day. Awesome. So yeah, having multiple people inside a group is always it's good because you bounce off of each other. You encourage each other's work, and you also share techniques and opinions on how to do certain things as well. So it's always a great thing to have more. Well, the more the merrier, it feels like sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing with that, of course, is the less people you have, maybe the less often you post, but the regularity is something that really helps. Having it your way, if you have something every day, that means someone's coming back every day, and something's up. So that keeping that going becomes an important of some sort. At least people
definitely.
know when to come and look at your website. Excellent.
That's definitely the case. I think quite a few of our, every single one of the people we've got inside our group, apart from I think two people, were basically regular readers beforehand. So they would actually contact us and say, we used to have auditions to say, hey, who wants to join us? And we'd meet them all, we'd go out and have a few drinks, and then go, yeah, we'll bring that person into the team. And it's always people you really enjoy spending time with, which is brilliant.
Yeah, that's something that I think is going to be key when it comes to having people involved with a project. It's having the people who feel the same way as you and you can get on with.
Yeah,
So at least that way you're all pulling in the same direction, which helps a lot. And yeah, so you said, so we've got constant updates on there about what you're doing in the hobby, about games, things like that. You're, at least some of you are at pretty much every Games Workshop event.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's going. That's the other advantage of a decent number of people.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's nice to actually have everyone meet up at the Horus Heresy Weekender and just spend a bit of time together and, have a good catch up, because a lot of us don't live we don't see each other regularly because we're quite spread out across the country.
Sure.
And, Lady Atia is obviously in
Foreign
Austria.
parts.
Yeah, somewhere like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's nice to get everyone together at these events. That's the best thing.
And having this blog, has that helped you as a group to get stronger? Has it provided more opportunities for gaming and things like that, or is it?
Oh yeah, definitely. We've we've got a really good relationship with Games Workshop and Forge World now, which is brilliant, which I'm really, really chuffed about. We do consider them friends, and we do respect them a lot. To be honest, I'm not even a football fan, but I actually consider all the Forge World staff, basically my heroes. So
You're not the only one. You're not the only one.
I couldn't name 10 footballers, but I could name every single Forge World member and just say, what they've been working on, and
Sure.
I get so excited when I see them. It's brilliant. But yeah, our relationship with Games Workshop and stuff is getting stronger. We do get some pre-released items and do get told a few certain things beforehand, which is nice. So yeah, it's good to have that sort of connectivity with the group and the world as well, because there's a lot of people out there who are fantastic hobbyists, and you just want to, it's nice to be able to speak to them, and a lot of them are actually readers of our group as well, which is great. So that's always quite shocking when you hear people at events say, "Oh yeah, I read your stuff," and you're like, "Oh, do you? Okay, great, thank you."
Yeah.
And it's nice when a few Forge World staff say it as well, which is really pleasing.
You never quite get used to some of that.
No, you don't. You really don't. I think the weirdest thing is when random people just stop and shake your hand and say, "Oh, I'll read your stuff, keep it up, it's brilliant." You're like, okay. How do you know me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I have the advantage of my voice is everywhere. So people understand the voice. But trying to pick you guys out, I kind of had a rough idea of which ones you were, but trying to actually locate specific people was a bit more difficult for me. It's all part of the fun. Yeah, but as you say, so you developed this relationship with Forge World and Games Workshop, and specifically, certain people in that. And that, I think, the one thing I know a lot of people do is Garrow. We're hopefully going to get Garrow on to talk on one of these as well. But yourself and Garrow provide the best kind of on-site coverage of events in terms of it's there immediately. It's actual news as much as possible, and there's no kind of filler per se in that. It's providing information without, there are some sites out there who would bombard you with adverts before you get there and are, proper clickbait kind of titles and things like that.
Yeah, I know. There are, I think there's a few blogs and a few sites which are a bit difficult to get into. I know, actually, I'll name one. I'm finding Battle Lost Souls more and more difficult every day to get into it.
Yeah.
I can't even, it gets to a point where I can't even open it. I have to hold onto the screen and constantly pan up and down, otherwise an advert pops up and I get redirected to something.
Yeah, and I find actually generally they're usually taken from third parties anyway.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, definitely.
You know, and I'll call that out. They do have some interesting stuff on there.
There's some great stuff.
Not saying
I
it's
just
not.
wish I could read it easier.
yeah, certainly on a mobile phone, particularly difficult.
Oh, yes, I agree with that.
So, in that respect, it's a case of when you take photos, if the photos aren't if for some reason you get someone else's photos first, they're credited to those people, which is another key thing as well. So what you've got going on is an honest kind of, it has integrity, is what I'm trying to say. And that's, I think that's a key thing for something like a blog to have.
That is definitely the case. A lot of the issues is for us that there's a lot of people immediately send us stuff as soon as it appears in, I think some of these, Bolter and Chainsaw, Daka and all the other, really good community sites. So by the time we get it, we don't know who sends it.
Sure, yeah.
So a lot of the time we just have to say, thanks to the internet, because we're just bombarded with things. Oh yeah, have you just seen this? And I think a little while ago when we were given burning of, Prospero beforehand, we weren't allowed to talk about it at all. But the problem is we have to go a bit silent for that, and
the board
understand
game,
why. Because as soon as we've got it, we're not allowed to talk about it until official release date, official preview dates. But it's part and parcel of our relationship with Games Workshop, which hopefully will just get stronger and stronger like that.
Yeah,
but the other thing is just regarding all the constantly on the fly reporting which we try to do. And Garrett does. I think there's one thing at the moment which is really good is the community support team from Warhammer community is reporting pretty much within about 15 minutes of us reporting it. So generally, they get better pictures and everything from all the seminars within 15 minutes of us taking the photos anyway. So it might get to a point where we're completely superseded and our on-the-fly reporting isn't as immediately pressing as, just waiting an extra 15 minutes and seeing a better picture of it all.
I think with the models that could potentially become the thing. I think when it comes to the information, that's more work than GW are prepared to do, because it takes man hours at the end of the day. You've got a group of however many you take to the Heresy Weekender. That's a lot of questions being asked in a half-hour period of time. So
yeah, definitely. You have to. I try to write them down on the fly as we go over. So sometimes it seems a bit curt, but our little posts. So it's this person just said this. We know this is now the next release or in this range here. But the issue is the problem. We also want to have a bit of fun as well and enjoy the time. So you can't just sit there just typing constantly. Which it's a shame. But so a lot of the time we actually get a lot more. We give a lot more of the answers in the questions people ask in the comments. So, we were told this, when we're generally driving home the next day. It's okay, this is the answer to all these questions which we've had put on our, blog. And, a lot of the time we just ask each other, have you heard about this? Or did you hear about that? And, also it's nice because sometimes other attendees will come up to us and say, did you hear that, this is happening? Did you hear that somebody just said that this is happening? Like we were told at one of these Black Library live events. I think how long ago was it? About 2 years ago that Gilliman was coming back. We told everyone about it. We said, Gilliman's going to be coming back. But generally, people just we were told that second hand. But we were told that from a really reliable source who just had it told to them.
Sure, right, okay.
So it's things like that. They just appear.
Yeah, absolutely. That in itself can be an interesting dilemma for a reporter, where you get that information from and the context it's in.
Yeah.
It's fair to say, I think that I've sat on stuff that I kind of know that's coming, because again, you wouldn't say you're building a relationship with GW, you're not feeding off them or anything like that. But there's no reason for you to anger GW. There's no reason for you to kind of get at them. Working with them provides much better
I agree there.
Yeah, it's a much better environment, and and the community will generate and be better off for working alongside them. And then every now and then that means keeping your mouth shut.
Oh yeah, that's the case we did.
Yeah.
You have to keep certain things yourselves, and at the moment we are being, there's certain things we've been told at the moment which we're keeping under our hats.
Yeah.
it's exciting things coming up, as you know.
That's excellent. Yeah. So on the blog side of it, how easy is that blogging? Do you just use a WordPress kind of deal?
Well, we use a system called Blogger. It's a app designed by Google, which enables us to create a decent blog from the ground up.
Sure.
Where you can enable comments, you can do as many restrictions as you want, so you can say that people have to go through the whole password protected things and verify you're not a robot, etc. You can add lots of different options to the blog, such as polls, what else? Pages and post contents, favorite posts. And almost heat sourcing style kind of things as well. And then you choose how you want your blog to look based on several different designs, and then you go, yeah, that's what I want. And then it immediately applies that design to it. You then add a few, you can do a logo yourself through Paint or any other processing software. Create that header. That then gives you the, obviously that will create your logo for the blog.
Sure.
And then you just make it live. And then after that, you have a few different ways of creating a post, and one of which is to log on to, go onto the internet, Internet Explorer or Edge, etc. Type in, go to the Blogger website, go to the post section, and then what you do is write out exactly what you want to say and how you want to chat about it, and choose fonts, styles, colours, add pictures, and then simple as writing a Word document really, and then just press post, or you can schedule it, so you don't even need to be you don't even need to be in the country or anything at the time, which is good because sometimes you want to schedule a few posts in advance, so you keep the content up and take a nice little break from it if you need to. The mobile software for it is pretty obsolete, unfortunately, at the moment. I think Google completely stopped supporting it about 2 iOSs ago.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so unfortunately we're still working from the old systems, which is a problem sometimes because you can't, for example, I can't write a post header without it crashing, so I have to write it in another application, copy it and paste it into that one.
Sure.
And it'll work, which is incredibly frustrating. But we get by. A lot of the time when we go to events, we sometimes might bring a laptop just to do a few checks or amendments in the evenings, or we write things out. Write things out in inside the notes on your phone, for example, during the day, and then just paste it into into the Blogger application and just press post. So it works, but we have to find ways around it working now. If I was going to start again, I wouldn't be using Blogger because of the issues we're having with it now.
Sure.
But there are so many other decent systems out there. But if you are reporting on the fly, then Blogger might not be the one for you unless you're, well, in fact, it can't be for you unless you've already got it.
Sure. And there might even be, I think, actually looking into it, I think there are ways of transferring your data across that aren't as difficult as they kind of sound like they should be. Because essentially what you've described there is the way I put posts up as well. And it's as simple as you describe it. So if you've got something you think is of value, the minimum that you have to do is what you've just done. Now, how pretty you make your blog, there are some applications and things you can add on to whether you're using WordPress or another blog thing. And some of them, sometimes you have to be a bit sensible and clever and do things one thing at a time to see if they work. But I personally found that Google has most of the answers, or a YouTube video.
Yeah, I agree there. Finding out how to create databases and actually have it on pages inside the blog applications, you have to just just put a bit of effort into finding it, and there's always people out there who blog about making blogs.
Yeah, and there's people podcast about podcasting.
Yeah.
It is always the way, and thank heavens for all of them, because they are wonderful people. But yeah, so essentially, it's that simple to be able to output what you're outputting. And if you feel you have something to output, if you do it, as you say, your blog is always positive. You're always trying to push, the hobby to, the best levels that you guys can achieve, and to spread information in the right manner and things like that. Then I think there's always going to be a voice, an ear to listen to it as well.
Yes, that's it.
Which, this hobby's growing and growing and growing. This niche within a niche. And there's lots of people clamouring for Horus Heresy content.
Yeah, I agree there. The other there's quite a few suggestions as well. Like, if you are going to create your own blog, it might be worth contacting certain people like Gary and Natka, and get put on his blog role, because I think he's one of the biggest community bloggers out there. And whenever you put a post up, it appears there. And obviously he deals with on the fly news at Fayette's 912, wherever it is.
Sure.
And a lot of time you get a lot of content directly from other blog sites, which is good. So it's always good to form a relationship with these other people as well. You're all on the same side at the end of the day, which is a nice thing.
Well, that's something that some people say. I've had people say, what about your competition? And I'm like, well, there's no competition. No. There are other people, and actually you find that the more you build each other up, the more you grow.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
You create an environment that gets used to reading blogs or gets used to listening to podcasts, So, and people will always have their kind of favourites, and, everyone's only got so much time in the day, haven't they? But
oh, yeah, they do, yeah.
But there are people who will like what you're doing and not like what everyone else is doing for the strangest of reasons, sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
So, just be yourself and go with it. Awesome.
Yeah, that's definitely the case.
Is there anything else about being a Superstar Heresy blog set that you think you might want to impart?
Thank you very much. I think the only time we actually do get once again, it's quite shocking when we do turn up at places and people go, "Oh, you're from Battle Bunnies." Yeah, we are. Thank you. It's really nice when you get to gaming events and you have that sort of reception as well, which is really nice. I've seen this on your blog. Oh, thank you. Oh, yeah. Let me think. There's nothing which immediately makes me. There's nothing which immediately jumps out, I'd say. It's nice. I think it's nice to know that we get some fantastic comments from people. And a lot of people just appreciate us, the work we do, and the fact that they've always got something to follow, and they can always go, all right, let's see what's, they've been up to at the end of this week.
Sure. And
even if a lot of people just think that the weekly progress report we do is one of the best things ever. And it's just because they know that there's other people out there doing what we're doing, what they're doing, and what they're going through. And not everyone likes to paint all the time, but they know that they should be.
Definitely.
So.
And it's the other thing as well. It's not being afraid to show a model off that's not finished. It's showing that some things do take time. Sometimes it's showing that people struggle.
Yeah,
not everyone can just turn a model, a bit of green stuff and something into an amazing, completely different model. We can't all do that. I'm doing this kind of 365 hours of hobby in the year because I'm fed up of trying to count models because it depresses me because I'm slow,
Yeah, but I do know. I've got a garage full of stuff at the moment, and every single day I just sit there dreading the fact I've got to get another miniature out after I finish this next one. And it's always good to have objectives and goals. Oh yeah, I've got to finish this list for this event, and that's a quite good thing to do. Is to always have a goal to achieve. I think it's the same thing with the blog. Is we always know what we're aiming to get completed. So we know it actually encourages us. It encourages us to paint.
Yeah.
we know that we've got to get stuff done. We know that we've got to make content, and yeah, it's always good. It's always good to have that extra reason to pick up your paintbrushes at the end of the day.
Sure.
When you're really tired and you just want to go to sleep.
Cool. One last question then. As a group, how proud of you are of your blog are you?
We're very proud now, I think. There was a little while ago where we were actually considering changing the name and, rebuilding it from the ground up. And,
Right.
the issue is, we actually decided against it because we would almost become a bit of a name in heresy, and everyone came to view our. Well, we've got thousands and thousands of readers every day, and it's a bit of difficulty to actually go. Oh, actually, can you start reading this one instead? So it's when people start going, oh, everyone knows about the Battle Bunnies. Everyone who is involved in the heresy knows about the Battle Bunnies.
Yeah.
At that point, you're like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't change it. So we decided to keep it, and we are very proud of it. We just want to make it better and better every single year. And the past year and a half been quite slow, and we've all gone through life issues and moving homes multiple times. So we're now getting to the point where we're trying to be in our golden era of the hobby.
Sure.
One thing we do every single year, we actually get together and have a birthday party, but we always try to do it in the theme of the Legion of the amount of years old the group is.
Okay.
So, for example, two years ago, we had the 4th Legion birthday party, so I had to do I was collecting the 4th Legion at that point, so I had to do a meal based on the, basically, what is it, basically a Greek meal. But it's also meant to be half Russian as well, so I had to make a Greek Russian fusion meal.
Okay.
But just keeping those things there and adding those little touches is always something which a lot of people appreciate, and it makes me happy that we've got a group like we've got now. And I do love that every single one of our what are they called, contributors. They're just fantastic people to be around and involved with, and they all share the exact same passion, and they all want to make sure the blog succeeds, and everyone wants to throw their great ideas into the mix, and we all just basically sit there and pick and choose what we want to do next to make it even better, which is what we've got to keep doing. That's what everyone should keep trying to do in their hobby.
And just for listeners, thousands and thousands of blog views a day is extremely good. As I'm a fan of saying, I think Libsyn a year and a half ago put out their figures that the average podcast gets 140 listeners. So when you think about that's the average podcast. So, if you get 400 people listening or viewing and you think, oh, that's not very many, put 400 people in a room and stand in front of them. All right. And then, you don't have to get 50,000 people listening or reading or whatever to be a success. So, and your success is 6 years of hard work from a number of people. So,
yeah, definitely.
But brilliant stuff. Excellent. Well, thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you very much.
And, I'll see you at an event soon.
I'm sure I will. I always see you every single one.
Yeah, that's it. Brilliant stuff. Thanks for coming on.
All right. Cheers, then. Bye.
Cheers. And that's another show. Before we go, we should have done this at the top of the show, but I will apologise for making a number of errors in the previous show whilst talking particularly about the Thousand Suns. Pretty much as soon as I put the show out, I was like, oh man, I said that, didn't I? I didn't mean that. I meant this. And I said that, and I didn't mean that. And, there was a couple of them were caused by tiredness, and a couple of them were me misspeaking. So, not quite the truest version of the rules, but Sekhmet Terminators are pretty good. Let's just say that.
Leave it at that, shall we?
Yeah, the FAQ document's almost finished. There's a couple of things I need to check up. And been looking at the Space Hulls and the Thousand Suns, and trying to work out if we need to do anything or what we need to do. And certainly on the way back from Company of Legends, Joe and I were discussing Magnus and maybe what the minimal things are you can do to stop him being the powerhouse he has the potential to be. So, and I think actually maybe some of those things are potentially what Forgewell wanted. But we're looking at whether it's needed to be done and if so, what we have to do. But it will be very much doing the minimal thing to knock it on its head. But there are some easy fixes. And if you're playing with a group of gamers that you know well, then you just organise it amongst yourselves. There's some brilliant answers on 30k forums. It's like, if I roll these powers, I just re-roll them rather than take them. It's like, well, that's an option, you know. You don't have to use the powers you're using. You don't have to roll on the hardest tables. He's still a pretty good Primarch. It's like Russ. You don't necessarily have to shift all the wounds around all the different units until he's left alive, but you can do, and it depends on the game you're playing, the situation, who you're playing with, everything else, really. So, yeah, there are in fact, I've got to try to work out how we broach this subject on the forum, but on the podcast. But there's discussions about some of the rights of war and how they don't necessarily unbalance the games in terms of making things tough or hard or whatever, or filth or anything like that, but certainly shift the way that a lot of armies have to try and deal with them, which cannot lead to less than interesting or fun games. And looking at what we can do with that. So there was some interesting. The brilliant thing about having everyone in one place is that all that evening we were all sat there. You know, we weren't at a pub. We didn't spread out. We were all chatting about some of the issues we've had during the day or whatever, or why there weren't those issues there at that event that we've had at other events, things like that. There's a lot of cool stuff going on. So, yeah.
I must admit, it did sound rather good.
Yeah, you know, you're always going to meet interesting characters when you're away at these things. There's a couple of them for sure, but had a lot of fun, and suddenly kind of realise that actually there's a number of similar venues to that down where I am. The problem being access to them. It's not,
yes,
you know, when people are travelling like that, and there's things you can do. You can certainly kind of run, you know, won't call it a taxi service, but certainly a pickup service from the nearest train station and whatever. Problem being south of London, for a lot of people, they'd have to come into London, get across London, then come out of London, which is the reason why we don't take trains anywhere. It's
it's
not
very true, actually.
Worth the hassle. You know, it's half an hour drive for me to get to a decent train station, and then it's an hour into London, then it's across London to get on the train. So, you know, you don't want to impose that on people per se, but there are options. The venue worked really well. Yeah, cool. Is there anything you want to shove in the end of the show that we need to shout out or discuss?
Well, only one thing really, which is Martin Waller is running a little raffle to similar to what we did, but it's for a miniature that Duncan's painted. He's doing it for charity.
Yes.
He's put it up there, so if you fancy putting a few quid his way just for this raffle for it's a Sister of Silence that Duncan painted. I think it's quite a cool little thing to own in your collection.
So where would they find that information for that?
Well, I believe it's on Facebook. It's on Instagram. If you look up Martin Waller, I think it's Martin Waller figure painting or figure painter, something like that. You'll certainly find it. That he's got a link to his PayPal, and you can just send him a few quid, and he, go in the raffle.
Cool. Well, I'll try and find some links to those places and put them in the show notes if I can. I have seen it. I can't remember exactly where it was all organised through. So, but yeah, I will try and get that done for the show notes, as I say, because it's really cool. And you can win a model painted by Duncan.
Quite a cool little video he did as well with Duncan, which I thought was quite a nice touch.
Oh, excellent. I haven't looked at that yet, so I might have to do that. It's all good. Excellent. So we should do the shout outs, shouldn't we? So if you've got anything you want to feed back to us on, you can do it via Twitter. Let's start with Twitter. Imperial_truth for the show, and at Child of Fang for me.
And at Neil Paints for me.
And it's at Neil Paints for you on Instagram.
Yes, it is.
And it's at Child of Fang for me on Instagram. And also email in the show. So if you've got any questions, any queries, anything you want shouted out, in fact, we did shout out the event earlier for the Facebook group, which is all very good. So that was for the Yorkshire group, Heresy group page on Facebook. So type in Yorkshire Heresy if you're in or around the Yorkshire area and think you might be able to meet up. You know, it's quite different out there. Everything's a bit more spread out up there. It's kind of in their own set little areas than down here. But it is very good. I don't think... Remember, yeah, if you've got any shout-outs you want yourselves, I thought I had another one. I didn't. But you want us to shout something out on the show, then drop us a line. I would say, if you're going to shout out an event, it's probably only worth doing it if there are places.
Come to our event, but it's sold out.
Yeah, I keep hearing, obviously people get hold of podcasts early, and I completely understand that. But with the rate with some of these events sell out, can you shout out our event? And then, 3 days later, it's sold out. And then these podcasts are going, oh yeah, make your way down to Jefftown for Jeff's event. And I'm like, I know that one's sold out because I looked at getting a ticket for it. But we got no problem shouting out events, either. And there's loads of cool stuff going on. So, which is all groovy. Thanks.
There's that many events and they're selling out.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think there's a problem with those 30-odd, 40-player events. They sell out pretty quickly. And that's great. As I say, it'll be interesting to see when we get the pack up for my next event, to see kind of how well that goes, because it's going to be the whole of Element available to us. So, there's a big space. London, we sold 60 tickets, and I've had a handful of people say any chance of getting on a wait list already. So, there's a demand out there. But running the bigger events, you can't be so hands-on. There are issues with that, like there are issues with smaller events. So, it's just as long as we've got plenty of events going and they're spread out, then people are going to get to play in them. And you might have to travel a bit, but as I say, we travelled all the way up to Durham, do it in the right way. Yeah, it's a bit, it was tiring, but it wasn't way out of the realms of possibility. And bearing in mind the cheapness of that event, it became cheaper than going to an event 2 hours away. So, which is crazy weird, but
good on them.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going to do more, and hopefully we'll try and get up there again. Which is always good. Excellent stuff. And I think that's about it, really. I can't think of anything else. Leave an iTunes review. Leave 5-star iTunes reviews. We haven't had one in a while. It'd be nice to get some more.
When you get one, do you get an email?
No. But there is see, I've talked about this before. And I think I talk about it on some of the interviews with some of the podcasters. Before I started this podcast up, I listened to 40 odd podcasts a week, or when they came out. So most of them were bi-weekly. But one of them was about how to podcast, and this is how I learned how to set up the podcast, how to use the equipment, kind of some of the ways of marketing your show, as it were, and things like that. And some of the information went in, a lot didn't. That's why the show isn't better than it is. But this guy provides services to podcasters. So, in fact, the podcast is called the Audacity 2 Podcast. If you go onto that website, you'll be able to find links to, I think it's called My Podcast Reviews. You might even be able to put that in, My Podcast Reviews. And it's a service which tells you when your podcast gets reviews. So it's like a weekly or 2 weekly email, and it will go, you've had 7 reviews in the last week or whatever. And then if you want more information or you want it for more podcasts, you can pay to subscribe. But there's a free entry level which does that. And what it does is it searches, because iTunes you can only search your region. So if I want to see if anyone in America has left us a review, I have to sign out of my UK iTunes and sign in as if I'm in the US, and then look for my podcast, then look for reviews. So if you do that, say, if you just did that for the major listening nations, UK, USA, Canada, Sweden, Australia, that's without thinking about Ireland, Germany, Spain, France, Poland, where there are a few, maybe not as many as, those top 5 are the major groups, but there are others. This just looks through them all for you. And because we're not, we're a successful show. We have, a good number of listeners that's been growing particularly last 4 or 5 months. Really thank you guys who are new. We get a certain amount of reviews because you're only ever going to get a small percentage of people that do it any time. It's fine, We're not serial getting 5 million downloads, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depending on which way you want to look at it. But yeah, it's a really useful kind of thing. So if there are podcasters out there who want a service like that, then it's easier than going and changing your. Also, it's a bit weird going looking for reviews all the time. You feel a bit kind of like, love me.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
But it's also fun just to get them, and let's say when you get them and it's like, oh, I've got some new reviews on that thing. It pops it up and tells you, brilliant, you got a 5-star review, a 1-star review, and a 4-star review. Yay! Have a little read or whatever. It's all good. And as I say, it's also weird that iTunes doesn't necessarily use reviews as the way of judging your podcasts. A lot of it's done on how many people subscribe to the show. So using it on a weekly basis, it's all a bit strange as how it puts you up the rankings. But reviews do help in that people can read like what the show's about, why you like it, things like that, which is all groovy. Also, another thing is it's the amount of people I know who, you don't need an iPhone to be able to get iTunes podcasts. So I am looking at Google Play. I don't like SoundCloud. It's just a bit. I don't know why people. Maybe I haven't looked into SoundCloud enough, but it seems a bit strange to me. If you've got a smartphone, you can get a podcast app on your smartphone. Now, if you're on iTunes, you've got all the podcast apps, including the podcast app, which is free and automatically on your iPhone. However, if you're on Android, you can get Downcast. You can get there's if you put in podcast app into the app menu, you will find a number of different podcasting apps. All you need to do then is search for the title, because almost all of those apps will search iTunes for you, so you don't need an iTunes account. It just utilizes iTunes. Like something stupid like 75 or 80% of podcasts are generated through iTunes. It's just where it's like apps. It's like, if you're on iTunes, like there are 29 times the number of apps on iTunes that there are on Android. But iTunes, all these places search for iTunes because iTunes was the original, and it's really hard to break that down. So there are other places like Google Play and SoundCloud and Stitcher and all that. Great, awesome, you can do that. But you can download onto your phone these things, so you don't have to listen while you're at a computer. So you don't have to have an iPhone to get these things. You don't have to pay for anything. And I think some people aren't necessarily as aware of that, and it seems strange for people who are aware of it. They're like, yeah, of course they should know. But actually some don't. And you get people coming through the website to listen because that's the way they think is the easiest way to look at it, to listen to it. But, it's really easy all my iTunes are set that I have to download them because otherwise I'd use our work Wi-Fi all up in about 10 days with the amount of podcasts that I download. And I choose when to download them at home while I'm on my home Wi-Fi or on someone else's Wi-Fi, But yeah.
Stealing the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, steal the Wi-Fi. That's what the Wi-Fi is there for. But yeah, so, some people will still they only listen in the office. Fair enough. They go onto the website and listen to it. Cool. But, I say it's not, some people do it because they don't know, or because it's not plain. They're like, how do I get this through an Android app? Well, your Android podcast app should search iTunes for that podcast, and there's no way you're giving in to Apple by doing that. It's just, that's the most popular form. The amount of times you see podcasts come up, and I see it now, and I'm like, awesome. You've got a new podcast. Brilliant. Is it on iTunes? No. Well, it doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, because I listen to podcasts on my podcast app, and you can, there are ways to you can go direct to the feed and put the feed in, so it gets it direct from Libsyn or wherever you're hosting it. But once it's up on iTunes, all the apps will pick it up, so I can just type in, the Neil Hollis podcast. Boom, boom, boom. Oh, look, it's come up with the Neil Hollis.
Coming this summer.
Yeah, it's come up with the Neil Hollis podcast. Brilliant. Subscribe. Away I go. It's just hassle free. So, yeah. Anyway, that was a little bit behind the curtain. But again, I've had people approach me about, I don't know how to do it. I couldn't set up a podcast because of this. And actually, I've said it before and say it again, and people don't believe me, right? I do have a bit of a passion for doing this, which does help, but I am not particularly technically minded. My mate set up the website. It still looks a bit of a state, to be honest. I've set up the podcast. I've managed to get the podcast on iTunes, Google videos, Googling how to do things, YouTube videos, podcasts that I've listened to, like the Cliff Ravenscraft podcast as well, is another brilliant guy who podcasts about podcasting, Audacity to podcast. Everything I learned through those methods, pretty much, because I knew nothing going in. I've got a 50 quid mixer, I think I spent a bit more on the microphone, but you don't have to. Jason from Sons of Heresy, he goes through a different method of cleaning up his podcast post-show.
Deleting it?
Exactly. It may actually produce a slightly better sound than this one, but it's a lot more convoluted and has led to more than once him deleting the show. I've only done that once, and that was deleting back over, and that was my own stupid error in going, oh, that isn't finished, and done it. Which I should have stopped. But I have a slightly simpler method of cleaning up the show. And I think we've come to the same thing. He's done it through trial and error. I've done it through trial and error. We've got this. And then I talked to Max from the Road to Terror podcast. And he's got a completely different way of doing it because his missus has got a program that's much better than the ones we use. The program I use, Audacity, is completely free. There's nothing magic about what I do. People say the sound on this is good. I think it could be better. I am looking at improving that. I am currently looking at rearranging the whole podcast space I've got here, but I've got it better than it was just by going, oh yeah, how do I do that? Okay, I can try that. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I've just got
to talk nearer to the microphone because when I paint, I move my mouth away.
Yeah, but again, those little things, like I've actually hopefully you guys have noticed I've got a slightly better sound coming from me, these last 2 or 3 episodes, and that's because I've changed my mic position. So hopefully there's less, hissing and popping, and things like that, and I can see it less on the recording as it's going through. But But it took me a while to kind of realise, actually, I need to do this, I need to do that. I've got a good internet connection. Now, I record over Skype with Neil because we are 30 odd miles apart, which where we are is actually about an hour and a bit of drive. So there's no way that we can get together and do these. Plus time schedules mean we have to record late at night. So actually for me, a fast, internet connection that is reliable is very important for Skype. So actually it's not so bad because I actually want the upload speed as well, and I use my computer all the time. So awesome. I'll pay for unlimited internet with a decent speed, But if you're recording and you're all in the same room, you don't need that. So yeah, there's things you can do. But other podcasts will spend less to get their podcast out. I have my website I pay for, hosting I pay for, so the internet costs and all that. There are ways of doing it cheaper and probably getting the same result. But what was it? They always say you can have something good, fast, or cheap. You can have two of those, but you can never have all three.
Yeah, very true. Yeah.
If it's good, it can be fast. You can have it done quickly or done cheaply and good. But if it's cheaply and good, it will take you time. You can have something done fast, but it's either cheap or it's not very good. You can take one of those out and it works. It does work. So yeah, I've struggled over time. You go back and listen to some of those early episodes. Some of them are atrocious. And I think most podcasters say that, even when they're not as bad as other people's bad episodes, you hopefully improve and move forwards. But anyway, that was an unexpected little bit about podcasting. But hopefully that will fit into some future segments we talk about, with our community kind of heresy encouraging thing.
Yeah,
I still haven't come up with a good kind of title for that little kind of exploration, of what we're doing. Project. It's a project. But there we go. Awesome. So, Neil won't have anything to add. We've done all the contacts, so feel free to get in contact. And, if you're at Adepticon, come say hi. I'll try and wear stuff with Child of Fang on the shirt, or Greg Dan, or whatever. But, yeah, if you hear one of the loud English guys, it's probably me. And, yeah.
Easy to spot, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. There's a lot of people at Adepticon. And I say there's some of the people make me feel pretty small. So, it's all good. But, yeah. Or I'm the one snoring loudly in the room. It's one of the two. So yeah, and then hopefully the episode afterwards will come out on time. There's a chance it might not because it's not a huge amount of time between coming back and, the end of the month when the episode should be out. But after that, we should be back on the regular schedule and having some stuff planned. But there we go. That's enough. I've warbled on, as usual. And Neil's sat there painting in the quiet.
Yep.
Brilliant. Okay, well, until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.